Wolfpack, what's going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with your usual Monday show. Just, I believe, probably one more, maybe two more of these at tops before the season will arrive, and we will be in actual football mode. I cannot wait. This is always so fun. The drafts, the preparing, getting ready to go. But then the football is actually on the TV. It's getting cooler outside at night. It is just in the air here. My man Mo's got the allergies going for the seasonal changes. You know that football is coming. And I am so excited to get there. But before we do want to continue to recap this preseason usage as we have been doing every single Monday. It is so crucial to not overreact, but also to not underreact and to take the notes on usage, some performance notes as well, but mostly how are we seeing certain roles develop as we go, how our offense is improving or going backwards. And I guess that's a great launching off point because the Steelers might just be god awful is our first takeaway. We're going to kind of go takeaway by takeaway, try to hit a few players within each kind of team-based takeaways as we go tonight. We got about 12 or so crucial ones for you in preseason week 2. So we'll start, though, at the top. As mentioned, Steelers might just be god awful. Plus, we did have a potential big injury here with Jaylen Warren. And so you look at what happened here. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, they play the full game. One of their two starters is out there for the entire time. We still don't really know who it is. Probably going to be Russell Wilson, but I don't know that he showed much either. They muster against mostly third stringers, probably some fourth stringers. 3 total points, 139 pass yards, just an absolutely abysmal performance from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Fields going 11 of 17 for 92 yards. He did add 42 yards on the ground, 8 carries. That's always what brings the fantasy juice with him. But needless to say, the offense did not look competent at all with him, nor did it Russell Wilson. Sure, he completed 8 of 10 passes for a whopping 47 yards, 4.7 yards per attempt. It was abysmal to watch. It would be 3rd and 12, and he'd check it down 5 yards, just in and out, stuck in the mud all night. Disgusting offense. Again, 3 total points, 139 pass yards. They're starters for the most part against third stringers. Just abysmal to watch. And that just does have me worried about the offense as a whole. How much fantasy ceiling truly is there for George Pickens? Not only is it an Arthur Smith, never really produces quality wide receivers, no real passing game to note of. Is the running game even going to be that good? All the talk has been this offensive line is such a massive improvement. They certainly put the capital into it. It should be a massive improvement, yet these quarterbacks were under pressure all night. The running lanes really weren't that great. And just to put a cherry on top, Warren, maybe the most exciting player in this offense besides George Pickens, he goes down with a hamstring injury. They say it's going to be a multi-week injury here. Oh, man, it's just an ugly overall night. Warren did have to fall in my rankings. There's definitely a chance he could be ready for week 1, according to Dr. Edwin Porras. These things typically linger 2, maximum 3 weeks. So we still have some time that he could be ready for week 1, but we see these things flare up, linger. It's just certainly you can't draft him with quite as much confidence as you once had. So really the downward arrow on all of my Steelers here. And there's a guy that we're about to talk about that I actually see no reason why this rookie should not be going ahead of any Steelers. And I'm going to let you take that team, Mo. But did you have any other thoughts? This was one of the games that was like broadcasted live. Like me and my brother sat through and slugged through. I just felt like I had to keep cracking more beers to get through it because it was just like, this is awful. This is horrendous. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, if we just bury them and move to the next squad.
Nah, just brutal that the only talent-based bet that we were hoping to make in the backfield goes down. And it's like you're betting on Najee to be a compiler, and it's just not fun. And not Warren was the fun bet, and now it's harder to make. But moving on to something that is a little bit more fun is the Chiefs offense. We've been talking about this at length this offseason, looking to bounce back. Their first season last year, under 28 points per game in the Patrick Mahomes era. And they're looking to bounce back, and they look like they are in line to do just that. They don't even have Hollywood Brown out there, and they are firing on all cylinders. I said it a couple of weeks ago before the preseason started, saying Xavier Worthy was going to be one of those guys who is going to fire up draft boards after people get some real film on him and see him on an NFL field, and that is 100% the case. It looked absolutely phenomenal. His Week 2 preseason game was highlighted by that deep crossing route where Mahomes hit him perfectly in stride, and he kind of slipped and fell and fumbled, or not fumbled, but tumbled out of bounds rather. And but all around, it's a quality game for Worthy and the Chiefs offense as a whole. Rashee Rice doing exactly what we thought he was going to do. He's out there for just about every snap, running around on just about every drop back, 94% route participation, and he saw a 38% target share with Patrick Mahomes on the field. So obviously not something that's sustainable. That would have ranked number one among wide receivers last year, but he's still getting those layup targets, that 3.7-yard ADOT in the preseason. So he's doing exactly what he did last year, just dominating the underneath portion of the field. And you got to think that that's helpful for Xavier Worthy, opening up both Rice and Kelce opening up the underneath portions of the field for Xavier Worthy down deep. It's just, it's going to be a formidable Chiefs offense. They've got dudes working every layer of the field and just lethal weapons with Patrick Mahomes slinging the ball. I mean, I can't remember. It might have been Ben Gretsch of Ship Chasing, but it was like June when he was like, all of these guys could just be mispriced. Like just buying into the Chiefs offense is just what you have to do. And right now it's looking like that you're going to want every single piece of the Chiefs offense that you can buy.
Yeah, 110%. It's Gretsch has been on that. Hayden Winks, Davis Maddock, the biggest of Chiefs offensive supporters. A lot of smart minds in the fantasy space have been saying it a while. We've been saying it for a while, but you're seeing those signs in action of that more vertical offense, of the Mahomes returning to that glory. Like you mentioned, just 15th in scoring last year, 27th in combined scores as well. No real shootout games, but this offense is back to those, looking at least like it should be, largely because of Worthy, 25% target share. You mentioned the monster share of Rice, but also worth noting that it's been a 25% target share for Xavier Worthy in a whopping 20.8 ADOT, 68.8% of their air yards as well in nearly every snap, 15 of 18 snaps with Mahomes out there. You see him Reed move him around too in motion. He's in the slot. He's out wide, getting handoffs, 73 yards and a touchdown on 4 touches, 3 catches this week. It has been awesome to see. The only other, I included one little bonus nugget, not really that exciting here, but just wanted to note, we've talked about Deneric Prince maybe being this RB2, maybe beating out CEH. He was the clear distant guy behind something named Carson Steele. I do not know what this creature is. He's massive. He's a humongous human being while he was out there, but he had 100% of the snaps on the second drive with the starters once Isaiah Pacheco checked out for the day, had already proven what they needed to see. So it does seem like the dream on Deneric Prince is over. He looked good when he got in there finally, but it was definitely in the second half. It was not what you wanted to do. Maybe CEH is just safe now because he didn't play. He was out with an illness. Maybe it is clear that he's just the number 2 guy, but want to just add that very exciting nugget here.
I think they're just flinging stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Isaiah Pacheco is just that much clearer, like the dog here. He is going to go bananas.
But what'd you see out of your Patriots?
I think there are some reasons to actually be excited, and not a lot of reasons, but Drake May, there's a lot of buzz that maybe, just maybe, he could end up being that week 1 starter. You know, at some point he's going to get in here and get his reps, but there's it's a wide range here of what it could be. Is he going to be at the end of the season when it's totally cooked out? You could see Mayo maybe doing that, but the latest rumblings are Drake May could be the starter. You watch the game. I watched every snap, of course, on Thursday, and Brissett throws a red zone interception, looks real bad just overall. And then we get May coming in, and there's just so much juice to once he's in there. We get that nice rushing touchdown, a reminder of his Konami upside, the Josh Allen comparisons. Well, that cannon arm on display as well. He ultimately just goes 6 of 11, 47 yards, but he had a beautiful deep throw, just a flick of the wrist while on the move to Javon Baker. He didn't haul it in. Unfortunately, it hit him right in the hands. It should have been. It was a gorgeous attempt, but there was multiple times where he was on the move, looking one way, zipped it the next, like these crossbody throws that you just can very rarely see. We haven't seen it in New England really ever in terms of this mobility, this ability on the run. It's just exciting to see it. And all the buzz on Twitter today, Gerard Mayo on Drake May when he appeared on WEI, the local radio. This is what I heard, and I was like, oh, okay. Perked up, and I found the quote on Twitter. 100% we don't have a starting QB right now. When it's time, we'll announce that, but he could absolutely be QB1, and so could Jacoby. And that's a big far cry from July 23rd when he was saying Gerard Mayo. I don't think there's any doubt Brissett is the starting quarterback at this point in time. We've definitely seen a shift in that. And so this last round pick in Drake May that you're kind of drafting just more so maybe second half of the year, you start getting the full season type of upside here. It's a gross offense. It's not overly exciting as a unit. And yet there's definitely some value to be had here, especially with how cheap all the weapons are. And On that note, the weapons are a little concerning. Polk only 2 of 15 snaps with the first team offense. We're seeing Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Reagor, all these just gross situations. KJ Osborne. Maybe it is just a matter of the rookie having to earn his time and earn his keep, but you'd like to see all the training camp reports are the guy's most consistent. He's making all the plays in camp, and yet you can't get elevated to play those starter snaps. Maybe it is just a matter of they wanted to keep him with Drake May, and they know that all these guys are going to kind of get elevated together. Either way, I did have to bump down Polk. Somebody I've been drafting pretty heavily in these best ball drafts, down quite a bit. He also got out-targeted by Javon Baker, who only hauled in 1 catch for 12 yards, but did lead the team in targets. Polk had 3 targets, 2 catches, 6 yards, a couple nifty moves, but ultimately both rookies right now firmly behind these gross veterans. I do imagine that will flip. I don't want to overreact to it, but it is just a little concerning where we're seeing a lot of teams. We just talked about Xavier Worthy getting thrust in there and into an every down role right from the jump and thriving. You'd like to see some of that from at least one of these guys, and we're not. But the most promising note, of course, is that Drake May could be the week 1 starter, makes him that much more draftable in these best ball drafts later on. Not the only rookie QB impressing right now, though.
Yeah, it's kind of gross to say, but there is a lot to be interested with in this Broncos offense. Just gross in the sense that I don't know how good they're going to be, but at a minimum for best ball, it's something that we have to keep our eye on and keep tabs on. And we're not, like we mentioned at the top of the show, we're not super interested in how players looked as opposed to their usage. But when it comes to quarterbacks, especially these rookie quarterbacks, that's something that is important. And Bo Nix looked the part during this week 2, his first preseason start during this week 2 performance. And there's been a narrative about Sean Payton trying to recreate Drew Brees with Bo Nix, and it seems like he might be able to do just that. I mean, he went 8 for 9 for 80 yards and a score during his first career start. And he was pretty successful in doing just what Drew Brees did, just highly accurate, a lot of short underneath stuff. He had a 3.8 yard ADOT. So it's encouraging to see that Nix may be able to do exactly what Sean Payton is looking for and do it well. So he definitely, we've kind of always anticipated, unlike Drake May, that Nix would be the week 1 starter. And with a quality performance like this, it's just moving further and closer to him solidifying himself as that week 1 starter, because at the end of the day, Sean Payton is a little bit more of a modern coach in terms of compared to Gerard Mayo in terms of his willing to give that veteran deference and just prop up the rookies right away. So that's all I have to say on Bo Nix. But moving on to the wide receivers there, it's brutal. If you've been drafting since April and you've kind of been just drafting like in kind of drafting the Broncos wide receiver room in the same way, your shares are just completely out of whack. It could very well be over for both Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin, because Tim Patrick has resurrected from the dead after 2 consecutive season-ending injuries. He is now approaching age 30, and he is looking like a starter for this football team. And I don't want to get too bent out of shape with this, because we know depth charts can fluctuate throughout the year and guys can emerge. But at this point, it's looking like Courtland Sutton's the clear-cut number 1, and then Tim Patrick could very easily be the number 2. He had a 75% route participation and earned 4 targets, which led the team in this weekend's game. And he also connected with Nix for a TD. So it's painful to see in terms of how I had been anticipating this wide receiver room to shake out. But you kind of have to adapt to the reality, and maybe it doesn't last the whole season, but when week 1 rolls around, it's looking like Tim Patrick is going to be a starter for this team, which is kind of unfortunate. Marvin Mims only played 1 snap with the starters, and Troy Franklin didn't get a single snap with the starters. He only played with the backups in this preseason game. So if Marvin Mims is dead, Troy Franklin is buried 25 feet under. I really don't know what to say. It's just I don't see him on the draft board anymore. I don't know what the ADP has adjusted to in terms of a reaction to this week 2 usage, but I haven't seen him go in any of the maybe 5 to 6 drafts I've done in the last night or so. So it's not great for Troy Franklin. And then finally, we've got to break down the backfield here. This has been a huge talking point for us all offseason, and frankly, this is going just the way that I've been hoping it would. It's looking like somewhat of a split between Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. Javonte posted a 42% snap share and handled 30% of the rushing attempts in two drives with Knicks, and he rotated in and out with Jaleel McLaughlin. McLaughlin played 58% of the snaps and was handling a lot of the passing work, including a 3rd and long situation. So in some degrees, they're trusting him in pass protection. And I don't think that the reality of the situation is Jaleel McLaughlin outsnaps Javonte Williams next season. But I think this is just a reason to get excited about Jaleel McLaughlin, especially in terms of how he's been using as a pass catcher. He saw a 67% route participation, which is really, really encouraging, especially if you've been scooping him up all summer long like I have, and I know you have as well. So this is all around really exciting for the two guys that personally I think we want to be getting touches out of this backfield. I think Jaleel McLaughlin is incredibly talented. It's just whether or not his size and ability to hold up in pass protection can keep him on the field in those passing situations. So I'm very much encouraged by this usage. And Samaje Perine did see the field with after the starters were off the field, but he could still play some sort of role in this backfield. I'm not entirely sold on him just being complete dust. He's obviously a cut candidate in some capacity. We'll see. The roster cut downs are coming here shortly, but personally, this is exactly how I wanted to see this backfield split. Javonte being that early down grinder with some of the passing work, running some of the routes, and Jaleel hopefully monopolizing the vast majority of the passing work.
Yeah, exactly. And you've cited it many times on the show, but 12 of 17 years, this backfield under Sean Payton as a total backfield has been top 2 in total fantasy points as a backfield, top 5 in expected receiving points for their running backs in every single year of those 17 years. So definitely big. If this thing is getting condensed down to 2 guys, that would be huge. Estimate did look actually pretty good in some pass protection situations too, so we'll see how that develops. And I know you mentioned Tim Patrick, and it seems so crazy, but definitely a guy I'm going to start tossing in on these last rounds. I know it's crazy, but nobody's drafted him for 75% of Best Ball Mania, and I really do. He's a guy I've always liked during his career. He's always just unsexy, but gets it done, and seems like he's clearly in line to play a major role this year. So definitely some interesting note there. We're going to move on to another rookie quarterback, but just real quick, Wolfpack, wanted to shout out, I should have done this right at the top. A lot of this preseason research comes from PFF's Nathan Yankee. He does a phenomenal job getting all the snap counts. I also love to read Dwayne McFarland's preseason utilization report. It is so solid, where he looks at the whole preseason of utilization, target shares, route shares, all that good stuff. He takes kind of what Yankee does and breaks it down in a percent way. That's really nice to look at. And then Hayden Winks also does some phenomenal film studies. So you know you're getting the research here. I like to watch as many games as I can, but I can't get to them all. Those are the 3 articles I can't miss every single week, and that's where a lot of these notes and nuggets come from. So shout out again to Nathan Yankee, to Hayden Winks, and to Dwayne McFarland, some of the best preseason coverage you can possibly get, where a lot of these notes are coming from. And of course, if you enjoy what you're hearing, that thumbs up button, over 125 here right from the jump. You'll love to see that. Let's get to that 250 earlier than what we normally do. Get us that thumbs up, the likes, the shares, the retweets. It does help us continue to grow so much. And I will just plug rotostreetjournal.com/draft guide. If you enjoy what you're hearing, you like our takes, it's one of the ways to support your boy. Only $10 will get you the best guide in the market. I can guarantee it. Alrighty, moving on to yet another rookie quarterback, Jayden Daniels, looking fully in command of this offense. McLaurin looking fully like his guy. Let's talk about it. 10 of 12 for Jayden Daniels, 78 yards, no touchdowns there, but also 13 yards on the ground. And yeah, it was a kind of boring 5.0 ADOT according to PFF on those 12 attempts, but nice and accurate so far. 16 and 20-yard attempts to his tight end, John Bates, and then, of course, McLaurin connecting deep down the field. There were some rumblings in camp this last week that McLaurin and him have just been on a different level, and it kind of makes sense. You hear Dan Quinn right off the jump say, Terry McLaurin, the clearest number 1 we possibly have. Well, he then calls out the rest of the roster as to needing a number 2 to step up, but he is raving about Terry McLaurin. A beat writer even drew a comparison to the Cup Stafford type of level of chemistry and connection that they're seeing in camp, and we're seeing that so far. 27% target share throughout the preseason so far for Terry McLaurin. I love this guy where he's going right now in the 50s range in best ball, the 60s, the 70s in redraft. Loving Terry McLaurin, and I'll give you a sneak peek of the draft guide, talked about Jayden Daniels being like that must-draft quarterback this year, going in round 9. all I do is see this guy in fully command as a passer. You know the leg points are there. The Konami code upside does not typically get available that late. You have to invest the third rounder in Josh Allen, in Jalen Hurts, or you can wait till round 9, build up your roster, and then have that upside for that much cheaper. So I'm loving what I'm seeing from Jayden Daniels. I'm loving the connection with Terry McLaurin. I'll have to keep watching to see who steps up as a number 2. There's, is it Diami Brown? Is it Jahan Dotson? Both of them playing very similar snap rates. One guy that hasn't stood out that we did like it and maybe still has a chance, Luke McCaffrey, has not played with the starters yet. He's consistently playing in the second half. We'll see how he emerges. But for now, Jayden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, definitely must drafts for me.
Yeah, Jayden Daniels has been a guy that I've been drafting all off season. It's hard. He's the last guy. You can make the argument for Deshaun Watson, I guess, if you want to, but he's the last guy off the board with legitimate rushing upside. When he was going well past pick 100 early this offseason, it was just so easy to pick him up. So as he comes up, I'm not surprised he's coming up, but as he comes up, I'm still drafting him. So I'm just really excited about this guy. But moving on to the other quarterback, the final rookie quarterback that we're going to discuss here, Caleb Williams. He continues to look the part. It's another week with a flashy play out of Caleb Williams. And this one comes on a beautiful throw to Odunze, just finding him down the sideline. It was a 45-yard reception, and that was Williams' only scoring drive of the game. He capped that drive off with a 7-yard TD scramble and found the end zone on the ground. Honestly, it really wasn't pretty for the Bears outside of that drive. A bunch of 3-and-outs against the Bengals backup defense, but it was good to see Williams find his footing and Odunze make a flashy play. So like we said, not too concerned with the overall output and production, more so just usage, but not great to see the offense struggle against the Bengals backups, but it is what it is. Ended up on a high note with that drive. And then Odunze, it's this wide receiver rotation is kind of tough for Odunze right now. It's not ideal. He was off the field in 12 personnel sets, or in 12 personnel. And from Ian Hartitz, the Bears are running 11 personnel at the lowest rate in the preseason. They're running 11 personnel on just 40% of their 40% of their snaps. So if Rome is relegated to 11 personnel only, I mean, it's going to be less than ideal, but there is also a very real reality. If you're on fantasy Twitter whatsoever, you are seeing that Keenan Allen weighs 300 pounds and he runs a 5.0 40-yard dash at this point in his career. They'll have you believe Keenan Allen is ready to be put in the casket and sent down the river, and it is done for with his NFL career. So we'll see. I'm buying into it to some degree. I mean, I'm no film bro, but I've seen the clips and I've seen his routes from this last preseason game. They're not great, and we know what Odunze is. We know he's incredibly talented. So even if this low rate of using 11 personnel holds up, I wouldn't be surprised to see Odunze just ice Keenan Allen and replace him in 2 wide receiver sets by midseason. So I'm not sweating it too much. Odunze still looked good while he was out there, and he even saw a bump in his route participation rate. He was at 68% in this game, which was up from the 50% that he saw in preseason week 1. So encouraging signs all around. The overall just offensive philosophy in terms of 11 personnel usage is less than encouraging, but I still believe that there's room for Odunze to just simply replace Keenan Allen in those 2 wide receiver sets.
It's absolutely maddening that this is even a discussion. Like, you have the 9th overall pick, a freakish athlete in Rome Odunze, 45-yard catch on his first target, 16-yard run. You got to get Gerald Everett out there, though. You really got to make sure to get him his snaps. If this is actually how they operate in the regular season, Shane Waldron should be canned by week 2. And we're going to talk about another 3-receiver team in terms of the Texans. I think a lot of this is probably just preseason, not wanting to give away your hand. These teams should be running 85% or higher, 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets. It doesn't make any sense to me, but this is what Shane Waldron did with Seattle last year when he had 3 no-brainer wide receivers to always get on the field. That's what kind of held back JSN. So it is a little bit of a concern. You love to see these glimpses of talent, but man, is Shane Waldron just that dumb? Maybe. We've already seen him be that dumb. He might be. And speaking of Gerald Everett, before we move on from the Bears, he did ultimately play more snaps than Cole Kmet, 50% more starter snaps. He now is up to 61% route rate compared to 39% for Cole Kmet, who's still going right there as like the fringe top 12 tight end and is good. I really like Kmet. I think he's a great player. They gave him a great extension there, big body, can use in the red zone. If he's not out there for all the routes, even half of the routes right now, there's no way he can justify his draft cost. So definitely one of the bigger fallers here. But again, please just wake up and get Odunze on the field, get a 3 wide receiver set, or like you hinted at, maybe Keenan Allen's the one that ends up getting bumped out of here. Tricky situation to invest in until we know otherwise, though. Now moving forward with another attack is the Daniel Jones-led Giants, and there's definitely some positives, certainly some negatives. His first game back in a long time, and what does he do? Throw 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. He did ultimately go 11 of 18, 138 yards, those 2 picks. Pretty ugly, and a lot of people harping on him, and as you should, but I do think we don't want to overshadow the fact that, yeah, this is his first action in so long. He looked pretty nimble out there. He was running around. We know that there's a Konami upside, and more so, this offense was just slinging it deep time and time again. He was willing to let it go. And so, again, yeah, 2 preseason picks. You hate to see it, but also, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? Let's pay attention to the fact that they are moving this thing down the ball down the field. They're running with Daniel Jones, still has that Konami upside. But more importantly than anything is these receivers, and especially Malik Nabers, 6 targets, 33% target share, 35% targets per route run. He ultimately finishes with 4 catches, 54 yards, also gets a carry. 91% of the Giants starters snaps. He leads the wide receivers in that category. He plays all but 3 snaps on the day, looking phenomenal there. And then it is a little bit of a mess from behind him. Wan'Dale Robinson playing every single snap in 3 wide receiver sets, playing none of the snaps in 12 personnel. So it's kind of like a Tank Dell we're going to talk about in a little bit, but just much less efficient, much less impactful when he's out there in Wan'Dale Robinson. So that's got to be a little concern. And then we had Slayton and Hyatt kind of rotating in on that other X wide receiver spot there. And Hyatt did play more of the passing situations, but it was Slayton who made the bigger impact. 3 catches, 58 yards, leading the team in receiving yards there. I do think both those guys really do make a decent last round best ball picks because of the way they like to sling it deep, what we saw in this game. So I thought that was all really, really solid, encouraging signs, despite, again, the 2 picks that were horrible. I guess just to put a bow on the Giants so I can kind of quickly cover Devin Singletary. 88% of the starter snaps, really, really solid there. 100% of the first team carries there, all 10 of them. Doesn't overly impress in that. I think it was like 25 yards or so on the ground, but does score, gets all the 3rd and longs, gets the goal line carries, pounds it in there. I know Tyron Tracy wasn't in, so maybe it's a little bit more of a split backfield, but we did see last year with the Texans, Singletary is very capable of shouldering 75% of the work, capable of putting 20-plus fantasy point days on that volume alone. His nickname is Motor, and he just kind of powers through, always falling forward. Singletary has played with Dayball before, and he had 70% snap share over his last 25 games under Brian Daboll on average when you factor in the playoffs as well when he was with the Bills there. So interesting to note that for sure, that he's seeing all this volume. It is a Daboll kind of move here to feed Singletary. And so going in those like hundreds or so range in best ball, it's definitely some nice volume if you start 0 running back. A great pick, in my opinion. So that wraps up my Giants analysis. Any thoughts on that, Mo, or shall we dive into the Texans?
Nice to confirm that we're getting probably just all the touches out of Singletary. I mean, yeah. I didn't think no one really thought that Tracy or Eric Gray would challenge him, but nice to get that confirmation. But moving on to the Texans, another thing that's being confirmed following what we saw out of the preseason week 1 usage. Tank Dell, not clearly the wide receiver 3 necessarily, but in terms of how they rotate their personnel, he is the wide receiver 3. He has not been on the field for 3 wide receiver sets at any point this offseason. He ran a route on only 8 of 13 plays with the starters, and he has not played a single snap of 12 personnel. So it's just been clearly Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, with Tank Dell relegated to 11 personnel packages, and that's concerning. I mean, he was only his route participation was only 64% during the preseason, and this comes with a big asterisk. It's a small sample size. It's less than 20 snaps. It's less than 20 plays, but So it's important to keep that in mind, that things can change, and this might not be indicative of what they do across the full season, but it's very much worth to note that at this point in time, Tank Dell is being used on a limited basis, only 11 personnel. But I guess with the negative of Tank Dell, it does come with a positive for Nico Collins out there for 15 of 17 starter snaps. And you and I had a little bit of this conversation like in terms of how the fantasy community operates versus just general NFL fans. Like Nico Collins has been the locked in wide receiver one in terms of like his fantasy ADP for the entire offseason. And I was kind of chit chatting with a couple of guys that I know who are just kind of NFL fans, not necessarily fantasy guys. And they said that Diggs is the wide receiver one in Houston. And I was like, I don't know, man, three yards per route run. That didn't mean a whole lot to them, but 3 yards per route run for Nico Collins, it was like him, Ayuk, and Tyreek Hill last year, the only guys. So Nico Collins, a special talent in my opinion, and we're getting confirmation that the Texans also view him as the clear-cut wide receiver one. I mean, 88% of the Houston's offensive snaps, and last season he was only running at 75%. So that's really big for Nico Collins, and not great for Tank Dell. He's the type of guy who can produce on a limited workload, limited usage and route participation. I mean, we saw him do it last year. He earned targets, and he produced on those splash plays. So I'm confident that he can return value, and I hope so, just based on my best ball bags right now. But definitely something to note that he has not been out there for 2 wide receiver sets.
Yeah, I'm certainly less worried in best ball about this, because I do think he's got those huge games within him. He's going to have plenty of those. I do think it could result in him being a little bit more frustrating in redraft, where when he misses a little bit more than you were used to last year. He typically had a pretty solid floor in addition to those humongous games. This could, let's say they get up huge and they're just pounding the rock to close out games. But then again, it's like if they got up huge, it's probably because Tank Dell had a massive play somewhere in there. I do think he's one of the best separators in all of football. So I'm not overly concerned with it. I did bump him like below St. Jones. And even then I'm like, I don't know. Or Zay Flowers, rather. I still don't even know if I feel great about that. I did see one interesting note on Collins as well. As you cited, just the clear wide receiver one here, 93% route share with the first team offense. If you take his yards per route run last year, second in the league, 3.37, but he only had 66% of the routes. So let's flip those things to give him 93% route share, which I know we can't automatically do. But should he have had that, he would have averaged 121.3 yards per game. That would have been the league high for the season. So there is a path. I think everybody's like, how could one of these Texans receivers ever produce and really dominate it when there's so many mouths to feed? Well, Nico Collins does what he did last year and sees this type of route share. Man, he could go completely bananas. He's definitely the clear top target for me of this pass catching core. Even though, again, last year, there's so many stats on this wide receiver core that's so fun. When they were on the field together last year, Collins and Dell, for at least 60% of the snaps, they averaged 21% target share for Nico, 21.4 for Dell. Air yards per game, 85 for Nico, 80 for Dell. But what it really came down to is fantasy points per game. Tank Dell averaged 18.8 compared to 18.2 for Nico. So it really was like Tank Dell was the better actual player when they were both on the field together. I still think this is one of those preseason stories that maybe they're not trying to show their hand. I'd be stunned if Bobby Slowick doesn't roll this offense out with 3 wide receiver sets at like one of the highest clips in the league. But he comes from the 49ers, and they do run far more 2 wide receiver sets there. We shall see for sure. Well, moving on, though, to the Dolphins. Don't forget about Raheem Mostert. 82% of the starter snaps, 83% of the rushing attempts on the first drive. I'm not sitting here overreacting this. Oh, we got to panic on Devon Achane because he only had 18% of the snaps, only had 17% of those rushing attempts. I'm not overly concerned about that. It's more so that I think everyone's just forgotten that like Raheem Mostert is still the number one guy here, still a guy that had 21 touchdowns last year and seems to be very much in that same role here. That was still nice to see. Achane was moved around as a receiver, pass catcher, looked damn efficient on his touches. You look at Mostert, 5 carries, 7 yards. Achane, 4 touches, 44 yards. Definitely a big gap in how they produced, but I think this was a big reminder that we cannot just pencil in Devon Achane workhorse level back. He's never going to be that anyways, but this was, I think, a reason to remember Raheem Mostert, going around 9 right now in these best ball drafts, still has very, very high touchdown upside in the offense as a whole. Just great to see Tua without his 2 big ace receiver, still goes 5 for 5, 51 yards and a touchdown. Good to see my man Jonnu, 2 targets on his 3 routes with Tua. I know it's again 3 routes, like we shouldn't overreact, but good to see them connecting. Good to see him ultimately putting up 4 catches, 23 yards involved. He's my highest owned tight end. So I like to see a little bit of usage there for Jonnu. But I thought the biggest takeaway for these Dolphins was, again, Raheem Mostert's not dead yet, folks, even though he's 32, potentially injury prone. It's still somebody that we have to keep on our radar. And I still think he's well worth drafting at his price tag.
Yeah. The usage, I'm not looking too much into it. Because Jalen Wright didn't dress for the game. He was hurt. Chris Brooks got hurt during the game with a concussion. So they were really thin at running back. They put in like a UDFA wide receiver to take snaps at running back during this game. So yeah, I'm like not like out of FAU. So I'm not looking too heavily into the usage because I think it was like super skewed by just the lack of depth that they had going on there. I mean, like we saw Achane basically playing as their slot receiver, like Waddle's hurt too. And like, they're just kind of, I don't know if Barrios dressed for the game, but he's been hurt throughout the preseason. So it's it's been a mess for the Dolphins in terms of their injuries. So I think the usage could have been skewed by that. So not looking too heavily into it, but definitely worth noting to not forget about Raheem Mostert. I mean, there's been definitely a drumbeat about using multiple running backs all season long. And they gave whether or not you agree with giving a 32-year-old an extension, they gave him an extension this offseason. So yeah, don't forget about him. But moving on to a less fun team, the Las Vegas Raiders. And honestly, I don't have a lot to say about the quarterback situation other than the fact that Gardner Minshew will be the starter. I was not going to be excited particularly either way. We saw Minshew allow Michael Pittman to finish as the wide receiver 13 last year, one of the highest target shares, target earners in the NFL last year. And I think a lot of that does have to do with Steichen's RPO style offense and just Pittman being that constant first read from Minshew and just getting the ball out quickly to him. So I don't know if that's something that's going to translate. I mean, I'm confident that Minshew is going to continue to pepper Devontae Adams. I mean, we kind of talked about it. Like he's one of the few guys who can see a 30% target share and get to 170 targets. I mean, he seems to do it like it's his job. I mean, it literally is his job. So I'm not buying much, or not necessarily buying much, but I'm like, my opinions on the offense here isn't really swayed based on Gardner Minshew being named the starter. But one thing that I do think is more interesting is Zamir White, perhaps not being the clear lead back here in Las Vegas. I mean, as much as everyone hates it, Alexander Mattison, he came here. It was 1 year, $3 or $4 million, but they gave him some money. And he is still in the NFL. And I know everyone hates it after drafting him in the 5th round last year, but these guys have been legitimately splitting work in these first couple of weeks. In preseason week 1, in drives 1 through 3, White handled 45% of the snaps and handled 55% of the rushing attempts. And then last week, both of these guys played in drives 1 through 8 of the game. So in that game, White handled 35% of the snaps and 33% of the rushing work. So who really knows if this is just Antonio Pierce kind of just like not wanting him to play, but why would you give him a little bit of the work instead of just fully resting him? It doesn't make sense. The conclusion that I want to come to is that this is a more split backfield than anyone's hoping for. And we've kind of always known that Zamir White is that fragile type of bet. You're betting on volume. You're betting on him being a compiler. I said it probably during our first stream that we did in March. We've been talking about this since March. It's been almost over 5 months at this point. And I said that Zamir White, I would be worried about his status in this backfield no matter who they added. And that ended up being Alexander Madison and Dylan Laub. And now we're kind of starting to feel that worry, and he hasn't even taken a regular season snap yet, because if Zamir White can't control the backfield touches and be out there for just about every single first and second down snap, he's being drafted as a low-end RB2, and he's not going to pay off at that price if he is not just the epitome of a compiler and just getting all of those touches, all of that work. So definitely a situation to monitor, and I would want to be making a decision here before week 1 rolls around, because if week 1 rolls around and they're splitting work, like, it's going to be abandoned ship real fast.
Exactly. It's not even a good offense. He's going ahead of right now. If this is a committee back, the whole reason he's going ahead of a guy like Brian Robinson or Chase Brown, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, Devin Singletary, the clear featured back. Why should this guy be going ahead of any of them? The only reason was he's the only guy in this backfield, and that's clearly not the case. The only other damning feather, doesn't help him out at all, the fact that it's not only split, he's playing into the second halves of the game. And I know it's like, it's a preseason. Who gives a crap? He's playing in the half too. Well, Yagi had a great tweet about how the best fantasy finishes by non-rookie running backs who play in the second half of preseason games since 2021. We've got Devonta Freeman, running back 31. Rex Burkhead, running back 52. Deion Jackson, running back 55. Donta Foreman, running back 57. And JaMychal Hasty, running back 62. Now, I don't think Zamir White is as damned as those guys were. They were clearly not. He's definitely the number 1 here, but it's just such a bad message that it is as split as it is, and he's playing as deep into these games as he is as well. It's definitely – he already was somebody I had very, very little of, and I will not be adding any more to. One of the biggest fades for me. Already was, and certainly will be even more so. Moving forward, one guy that I have been pretty off on, but maybe I need to reconsider, is Chris Olave. Certainly love the player, love the talent. I just hate the surrounding system that's around him, particularly Derek Carr, and how bad he looked last year, how bad this line has looked. But maybe that bad line in an evolving offense might actually favor Chris Olave getting more of a layup target role. That's what we've seen so far this preseason, a 94% route participation and a whopping 46% target share on plays with Derek Carr this season. And Kubiak doing that kind of that layup role from the 49er system. Let's get the ball in their hands. Let them do their thing. For so long, he really only had Olave, those vertical branches to his tree. He does in perfection, but ultimately Derek Carr was not delivering the rock quite so well. But to add those shorter and intermediate targets will be huge for him, especially, again, if this line stinks, you need to get it out quick. The fact that we're seeing 3 targets on 6 passes for Derek Carr in week 1, 4 targets on 9 passes for Derek Carr in week 2, he is the clear and utter focal point of this offense. We did also see Taysom Hill. You thinking a new regime that maybe Taysom Hill would get kicked to the curb, but no, 31% rush share with the starters, a 53% route share with the starters, over 64% of these snaps, ultimately takes 5 carries for 21 yards and a touchdown. He is still very much a thing, and honestly, he's good with the ball in his hands. I get why he continues to be a thing, and from the last 2 seasons, it carries inside the 10. Shout out John Daigle with this one. Alvin Kamara has 30 carries from inside the 10, and how many does Taysom Hill have? 30 as well, the exact same amount. So at tight end, I know we can't draft him in underdog, where we're going to be drafting in just about 10 minutes or so. But ultimately on DraftKings, on Drafters, if you play there, and of course in your redraft leagues, most often than not, Taysom Hill is a tight end, and at minimum, I think a very viable tight end too. If you miss out on the elites, why not go for a guy that has a 20-plus point ceiling at the position that's going to get used in such creative and interesting ways. Just interesting to see that this is not a new regime that's putting in their own stamp. They still love to have Taysom Hill involved here.
Yeah. Our buddy Liam, the Dorchard Chamber, he has been talking to me about how much he has been hammering Taysom Hill over on DraftKings, and he is continuing to have that Swiss Army usage even into his advanced age. It's just kind of shocking to see, and he's great for best ball. I probably won't touch him in redraft, because you're just basically trying to bet on when he's going to find the end zone, which is just brutal to predict. But an intriguing pick nonetheless, where he is tight end eligible. But moving on to a different offense, we've got the Chargers here. And our tag here says RB3 clarity. I don't know if it's clarity. It's more of just a little bit less murky is how I would like to describe it. A week after declaring Kimani Vidal dead, he is officially back. The Chargers know who he is. They are aware that he is able to carry the football and he can be tested out in a preseason game. And there's a good chance that last week he was just simply injured. I mean, he had been coming off of an injury, but it was weird, like dressed for the game but then did dressed for warmups, but then didn't play. But he was back and playing this week. He got 11 carries for 49 yards, handled 35% of the rush attempts with the starters, and he played throughout the game. But it's just encouraging to see him get some work. And his primary competition for the RB3 role, Jarrett Patterson, looked pretty bad. It was 4 carries for 10 yards, 5 catches for 28 yards. So Vidal definitely looked better in terms of his production on the field. So encouraging to see that. Definitely has not like locked himself into that RB3 role just yet, but he is officially risen. He is back from the dead, and he is certainly back into the draftable player pool after we declared him undraftable last week. So what a shock 1 week can do, and 11 carries in a preseason game can do for a player's draftableness. But here we are, his draftability rather. Here we are. Kimani Vidal should not be going in the 150s where he got up to earlier this preseason, but worth his stab late in drafts. And then the less clear, somehow even less clear, is the wide receiver rotation here in Los Angeles. So Josh Palmer, not being drafted as the wide receiver one here in Los Angeles. He goes a good number of picks, almost 30 picks behind Ladd McConkey, but he played 1 drive and then sat out the rest of the game. So it's seeming like he has like the wide receiver 1 job on locks. Who knows how it shakes out in terms of like a target earning share, but in terms of how his ability to earn targets, but in terms of how the Chargers view him, they view him as the top of the depth chart. And like we kind of harped on, this could just be veteran deference and him just, they know what they've got. They want McConkey to get some reps, but he did get sat down for the rest of the week or rest of the night after the first drive. And then McConkey, he plays 2 of the drives and sees a 64% route participation. So it's not great because he didn't see a single snap in 12 personnel. He was just out there for the 3 wide receiver sets in 11 personnel. So not great, like we kind of talked about with Odunze. Ability for him to kind of move up the depth chart is very much realistic. But at this point in time, a lot of people were hoping that kind of like inside out, not just a pure slot receiver, would make him able to make a push for those 2 wide receiver sets like from the jump. Like I said earlier, it's definitely possible that he can work his way into the 2 wide receiver sets, but to this point in time, not something that he has been doing. And then the other rookie who this is really the summer of Davis Maddock. Davis Maddock over at Ship Chasing. He has been talking about Brendan Rice for a long time, and he is he's playing. Like, that is all you can really say. He is playing. He's a 7th round pick, but he was out there with the starters. 71% route participation and 5 drives with the starters. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say in terms of like what he brings to the table or like this guy being a smash pick, but for a 7th round rookie who at this point has been just draft him whenever you want. You can get him with the final pick of the draft in just about every draft, unless you're in a lobby with Davis Maddock. You like him being on the field is just a huge win. That's all you really want to be seeing. And then the other couple guys here, DJ Shark and Quentin Johnston. Shark has a 67% route participation, and both Johnston and Shark are playing into the 3rd quarter. So it's really ugly in terms of the rotation, but we have a little bit more clarity. Brendan Rice is draftable now. Quentin Johnston probably. I mean, he'll be drafted. I won't be drafting him. I think I have a singular share. You may have me beat with 0 shares.
0.
Palmer, the de facto wide receiver 1's the big takeaway here, and McConkey playing in the slot only. Not necessarily slot only, but he's coming off the field in 2 wide receiver sets is the big takeaway here as well.
I was real surprised about the Lad stuff, and I've been a heavy Lad drafter, and this is definitely going to give me some pause. Again, I wonder if this is going to be the season of like preseason overreacting to 3 wide receiver sets and usage, or are we underreacting? Because it could tell us a ton if this is actually how it goes in the preseason, if the preseason goes in the regular season with Lad, with Tank, with some of these guys that we're just like now dinging a little bit because of it. Are we overreacting and they're just going to not really show us their true hand, or is this something to really pay attention to? We haven't really had this type of tracking and usage ever before, so it's interesting to see. And Vidal too, I was really excited to see him just actually look like a genuinely good football player. I had one draft this weekend. I had a great team going, and I slowly drifted off to sleep with the last round and got auto-drafted, woke up in sheer terror to see Kimani Vidal as the last pick. And oh no, this perfect team that I was in love with. And then on Sunday, of course, watching him rumble the way he did, or Saturday later in that night, felt all okay by the end of it, seeing him actually play. So not the end of the world to end up with Kimani Vidal on your teams at this point. Another rookie that's getting a little more signs of life, small signs we'll call them, but signs nonetheless, is Trey Benson. 9 carries, 43 yards, a nice run on a 19-yard gain, cut back on the other level of defense, outran tons of players there. Really nice to see. Now 64 yards on 17 preseason carries, ultimately led the way with 16 snaps, 47% snap share. 9 of the 15 carries was a 60% rushing share, and then 4 of the 15 routes was kind of the big concern here. Only 27% route share for Trey Benson. He is a solid pass catcher. We saw him have 33 passes, receptions on those last couple seasons. The starter, he had 11.2 yards per reception in college, so it is a little concerning. That's kind of why we wanted this guy, was a true 3-down skill set, an athletic freak, a size speed nightmare that rivals the athleticism of Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor. And he's not really able to separate from Amari DeMarcado. 11 snaps, 4 carries, 5 routes. He has 7 snaps, 5 routes for Michael Carter. The whole thesis for Trey Benson is that he was going to be this talented backup behind a very injury-prone starter. But to me, this is looking like if Connor goes down, we're going to get a 3-headed, messy situation, a nightmare. Maybe Benson continues to separate as the year goes and proves that he is truly talented. But as much as these signs of life seem solid, to me, it's also the big red flags of if he can't separate from those two, and this is going to be a 3-headed nightmare, why would we even be drafting him? So I've kind of put Benson on the do not draft list. He wasn't somebody I was heavily targeting anyways. But after these preseasons, it's nice to see. It was kind of panic button last week for a lot of people. Good to see him looking better at least, but still, it is just an ugly timeshare, and that's kind of making his handcuff appeal middling at best. Like, why should he go above Ray Davis, who I think we're going to talk about in a second? Like, what argument does Trey Benson have ahead of a guy that might be the clear number 2 back for the Bills? I don't have a clear one for him. I actually bumped Davis ahead of Trey Benson this weekend.
Davis ahead of Trey Benson is big. I mean, for much of the offseason, these guys are like 50, 60 picks apart. So, I mean, you saw Benson make a run for the double digits. So,
I got harpooned, Mo. I tweeted out, like, why are we taking Corum so clearly ahead of Benson? Isn't one kind of the clear handcuff right now? I tweeted that out probably a month ago. And the amount of people, do you even watch prospects, bro? Do you know a single thing? And now we got Corum going 15 to 20 picks ahead, getting starters, resting treatment as like a clear number 2. I wanted to kind of start retweeting these people and be like, oh, like victory lapping, like a backup take. But then I was like, I'm a pathetic loser if I'm doing that. Like, I really don't need to stoop to these type of levels. But like, people were so in on Benson being this clear cut, like monster pick. Like you said, almost in the 100, like inside the double digits and not even the 3 digits. I think everybody's a little overeager. In Dynasty, I see it. Like, this guy could definitely develop into the future guy. I just think this year, if the thesis was that Connor goes down a lot and we're going to have a really athletic freak backing him up, that made sense at the time. I think we have to change these priors. Like, to me, again, I don't get it. I don't know why he should go ahead of Ray Davis. A huge change, but you got to react to these things. Maybe I'm overreacting and then it's going to look foolish, but I don't know. What do you have? Like, what do you think? Like, do you have any good vibes about Benson right now?
No, I mean, like, it's like in the offseason, people were like pushing this narrative that he's going to like challenge James Conner for work. And it's just been like completely flipped on its head. I don't think I would go so far to rank Ray Davis. Like, I'm not going to take Ray Davis ahead of him just because I know just in terms of how the ADP shakes out, I could just get him like 20 picks later at this point. But I like Ray Davis. And just the general vibes from Trey Benson, not good through 2 weeks. But and moving on to Ray Davis, actually, the Bills backfield, we're getting some more clarity here. James Cook, kind of as we anticipated, the clear-cut guy here. I remain hesitant with Cook just because didn't see like high-end receiving usage and didn't see any goal line work last year. But in terms of a rusher, he's dominating the backfield, 88% of snaps, and handled every single rushing attempt with the starters last week. And he was running routes on 82% of the dropbacks. And obviously that's a very small sample size, so we can't lean into these splits too heavily. But encouraging sign for James Cook that not even necessarily encouraging, just good to confirm that he is in fact the clear number one option here. The more intriguing part of this backfield is not intriguing to most people, but intriguing to you and I would think, is the backup running back situation. And I have been talking about Ray Davis as the potential to be the clear-cut backup here throughout the offseason. And he's not clear-cut just yet, but he's leading the charge for sure. He looked the part. He looked the part last week. He had 8 carries for 58 yards, 7.2 yards per carry, had some quality looks. He had 40 yards after contact and shook a couple of tacklers. So it was all encouraging. And of the 12% of snaps that James Cook was not on the field for with the starters, it was Ray Davis who was in there. And 12% snap share with the starters, not super encouraging, but it tells you that he is the second man up in the rotation right now. And then once the starters left the field, he did rotate in and out with Ty Johnson over the course of their 4th, 5th, and 6th drives with the Bills backup offense. Davis handled 36% of the snaps and 40% of the attempts, rushing attempts, that is. So it's a split right now. It's no like running away with it for Ray Davis in terms of how this backfield is going to shake out, but he is the leader, and I hope so because he is one of those guys who I have been drafting along with Bucky Irving as like just the guy who's going to slot in right away as the RB2 in the backfield. So I'm hopeful that he will win this job. Ty Johnson has been missing practice left and right with what I believe was a hamstring. So that's given Ray Davis a big leg up in his ability to win this job. And he looked good while he was out there. So that is highly encouraging. And the fact that he was the only running back other than James Cook to get reps with the starters, that's just another big plus.
I'm all in. We talked about how Latavius Murray was number 9 in goal line attempts last year. I think that could very well be Ray Davis. He just looked so damn good, the way it popped. And you already talked about 5 missed tackles, though, on 8 carries. I think he is going to clearly be the guy. I know you mentioned, too, that James Cook, not a huge receiving workload. I did see a tweet. It's a very small sample size. This one from Dwayne McFarland. But in the games without Stephon Diggs, when he was not on the field, James Cook actually led the Bills in target share. I was nearly like 40% target share. It was only like about 20 or so total snaps, something that's hard to quantify, but it was with Joe Grady, who did start to use the backs and tight ends far more often as pass catchers, and ultimately there could be a path to a big role there for James Cook. So I think just big signs for both these guys, definitely risers on the week. Last running back we have on this list is Donta Foreman. Just a very quick one to cover here. It's a very frightening injury, though, in camp. Had to actually get flown out, an emergency evacuation there to go to the hospital, and now he's back and playing. So very nice to see, just real life-wise, very concerned in that sense. But to see him not only doing well, but actually playing well. He's back on the field, and we saw Pierre Strong. He's the starter with Ford and Chubb out. Didn't do much. 3 carries, 2 yards, 1 catch for 3 yards. And while that Foreman was significantly better mixing in there, but he had 10 carries, 18 yards. That's gross. But ultimately, he came in when they got it down to the goal line, came in, pounded it in, scored the rock with the starting offense. And then throughout the game, 5 catches on 5 targets, 46 yards, looking solid, looking nimble in space. I've always been a Foreman guy. He's a big body that can kind of do it all. And I think this reminded me, at least, of the potential early season value. I know we always typically want that back-weighted production, but if I'm loaded up on rookies, I need an early season guy. I do think Foreman could score you 4 to 5 touchdowns in those first 5 or 6 weeks while we're waiting it out for Nick Chubb. And then maybe even when Chubb's back, like Foreman is that just monster body. Still not even a guaranteed to make the roster. So take it with a grain of salt. But we saw Kareem Hunt have a monster red zone role with Chubb. And then also once Chubb was out, and I could see Foreman get pegged for that. So definitely back. A guy who's hammering is one of my favorite late round sleepers early in the offseason. He's back on that radar for me, given that he's healthy, good, great to see, but also he's going to have that touchdown role that I was really pegging him for early.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add there. Just a bridge running back if you draft like Jonathan Brooks or some rookie that you hope comes on later in the year. Just a fine 6th running back to add onto your roster. The final individual player that we're going to talk about here is Jordan Whittington, and he's kind of been like the preseason darling. I think it's also a lot has to do with it with Puka Nakua's emergence last season, just kind of latching on to, oh man, a Rams rookie wide receiver, like mid-round draft capital could emerge. But it's nice to see. Whittington had a 29% target share on 7 drives last weekend. So he looks good in terms of his ability to earn targets. He looked great in the first preseason game, but it's also important to provide context to this. The Rams rested 4 wide receivers. They rested Kupp, they rested Nakua, Atwell, and Demarcus Robinson. So they're pretty comfortable with their top 4. And we know how they just don't rotate wide receivers. So Whittington is going to have to jump both Atwell and Demarcus Robinson to see legitimate playing time this year. And whether that's just be injury or just general ability and play, it's not out of the range of outcomes. It's not out of the cards. So Whittington is draftable, but it's important that we take this with a grain of salt and understand that even though he is dominating the preseason, the Rams view him as the clear wide receiver 5. And maybe he jumps Atwell into the wide receiver 4 role rather quickly, but I think it's going to take an injury and then like some depth chart shuffling for Whittington to make an impact on this team. And it's like Puka Nakua, like he was just absolutely dominant, not dominant at BYU, but just incredibly efficient, like ridiculous yards per route run. And I was listening to a podcast today, Whittington's last year at Texas, Whittington's yards per route run were less than his teammate Jatavion Sanders, who was a tight end. Just not what you want to see in terms of like, you could kind of get there with Nakua, like this guy like just dominates efficiency wise, and like Whittington, not great of a prospect profile. And Nakua goes overlooked because he comes from a smaller school, Whittington out of Texas, and just getting outproduced by a tight end in terms of yards per out run. So not what you want to see, and just like good to take this with a grain of salt, but definitely draftable.
I think so. The only pushback I'd give on this is, yes, they rested Tutu Atwell, so that does imply Whittington's behind him. But I do think it's more so like Atwell's kind of the direct backup to Demarcus Robinson in that field stretching role. Whereas Whittington, if something does happen to Kupp or Nakua, he does play those underneath routes, the after the catch, those kind of dirty, get those yards, the tough yard, the contested balls. He is very solid. This back-to-back weeks now, we've seen him lead the Rams in preseason receiving yards, 5 for 52 this week, 6 for 74 the week before, and getting a lot of hype and praise from Sean McVay as being a mature, quote-unquote, grown man was the exact words he said. So I do kind of view it like if a Kupp or Nakua injury happened, I don't think they're going to slide in Tutu Atwell. I think that's more so the field stretching role. I could definitely see this being more of a receiver handcuff. Certainly not going to see the field time without injuries, but I wouldn't be stunned if at some point one of those guys does go down and we actually see Whittington step in and not Tutu Atwell. Maybe not. Maybe I misread it, but I think it's worth a last round stab in these best ball drafts, and certainly a guy you can star for your waiver wires in home leagues. Just like one of those it factor guys for me. I just watch him play and I just see something there. And I see Sean McVay, the type of guy that Sean McVay could use really, really well. So figure I'd toss that out there. Believe at this point, so we have a couple quick notes to just rip through rapid fire here. While I do that, I think my man Mo, you're about to jump in the draft at this point.
Yep. Yeah. Last week we caught some flack for not announcing when we are joining drafts. So
if you're out there, here's your warning. You want to draft with us? You're live. You want to join the stream? We are going to join now as we rip through these last notes. So we're hitting the enter draft, Best Ball Mania. Come on and draft with us if you'd like to. We'll thank, and of course, as we're drafting, we'll be answering all the mailbag questions. Some great things from Juan. A bunch of good questions in there from the crew. So get those on in. And of course, one last plea for that thumbs up button. 200. We've hit the number. You'd love to see it. We always hope to cross 200 people a night. Sometimes we've gone even close to 300. So maybe one last plea for those thumbs up buttons. If you like what you're hearing, enjoy the content. And of course, check out rotostreetjournal.com/draft guide. No space there. If you want my premium content, only $10 to get that and dominate, whether it's best ball, whether it's redraft. I have sections on both. And I think it could really help any drafter out. So just one last thing for the preseason that's always worth noting is when guys get that quote-unquote starter treatment. We already talked about Blake Corum not playing a single snap, a clear sign that he's the running back too. That's what led us to Kyren Williams last year, the fact that he was not playing at all in the preseason. So good to just confirm Blake Corum is very highly touted by this team. Khalif Raymond not playing for the Lions at all, a clear potential wide receiver 3 now in that role would be very valuable. So somebody I am definitely starting to monitor a bit more. Yoshevich did not play for the Bengals, who rested their entire starting unit. Jermaine Burton did. Yoshi did not play. So it seems like he is continuing to clearly be that lead guy. And one note that I thought was really interesting, the Raiders played all their starters, the entire line. Jacoby Myers played. Zamir White, of course, played into the second half, as we talked about. The only guys that didn't play, Devontae Adams, okay, veteran, and Brock Bowers does not play for the Raiders, which is very interesting. It kind of suggests maybe they have huge plans for this guy. So definitely something interesting there to see Brock Bowers get the resting treatment. Now, there are a handful of injuries. It looks like the draft is starting. We're going to be in the 10 hole, which I actually do like. I feel like after 10, once you get to 11 and 12, you're starting to deal with those injury guys, and it gets a little ugly. So we'll get to those. Just a couple quick injury notes, too. Christian Kirk, going to be held out this week. He's now going to be out from practice for 2 weeks. He says he's feeling good, but more so in his absence. Brian Thomas continuing to just vault up, being unguardable in camp. And I've never really been a big Kirk guy. I know you have a good amount of the Jags and Kirk. Somebody I've been fading, and I'm just a little worried. The first week of the preseason, getting no 3 wide receiver sets like we've talked about with a lot of these guys. Definitely concerned there. Of course, Eli Mitchell still hurt, still hasn't resumed practicing. Jordan Mason's going to be that number 2 back, and I'm targeting him now in drafts. And then the last injury note is DeAndre Hopkins is expected to play in week 1. He's falling over pick 100 now in DraftKings Best Ball. I got him at 105, even an underdog this morning on a puppy draft I did. And if he's going to be out there for week 1, I don't see much reason why he shouldn't be going closer to where he was going in the 70s. So I'm definitely going to keep capitalizing on that value. Huge DeAndre Hopkins fan, huge fan of betting on the Titans in general as a passing offense. All righty. That wraps up all the news notes. What else have we got, Mo?
I got a couple. Curtis Samuel, week to week with Turf Toe. I did this today. I'm trying to remember. Laporta hasn't returned to practice. He's got a hammy. He's been out for, I think, 2 weeks now. Hasn't appeared in a preseason game. So probably not anything serious, but something to monitor. Jaylen Waddle has missed 2 weeks of practice and with an undisclosed injury. Seems to be some sort of soft tissue type of deal. We're on the clock here. I'm going to go Garrett Wilson here.
Yeah, easy lock. Whoever the top 10 falls to you in there, you got to go with. And this is where it gets murky, the picks 11 and 12. I'd be interested to talk about, I know it's not our pick, like what you like to do when you find yourself at the tail end of drafts. But no, any other, you definitely, those are a couple. I knew of the Curtis Samuel. I did not know about Laporta and Jaylen Waddle still not practicing. That is a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
The
other big one, it's kind of minor. It's Chase Edmonds. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Chase Edmonds has not been practicing for weeks on end, which is just huge for Bucky Irving to win the RB2 job immediately in Tampa Bay. So that's a big one. Alvin Kamara has missed a couple days of practice, which is less than ideal, but I mean, he seems to be all right and is going to be out there when the regular season rolls around. It seems kind of day to day. I'm going to go Gibbs here. Are you cool with that?
I like Gibbs. I'm a little worried about the hammy, though. Is there any? I mean, Nico Collins I like here. I like Debo here as well. I'd rather go Nico or Debo, either one that you prefer.
I'm going to go Debo.
That's good.
One of my directional bets, like I have two big, just like offensive directional bets. It's Jacksonville and Houston. I guess we can kind of segue into this before we start ripping through the mailbag. Those are the two offenses I have heavily invested. I'm pushing 20% on Dell and Collins, as well as Kirk and Thomas, Brian Thomas Jr. So are you investing heavily in any offenses in particular? Are there anyone you're just all the way in on?
I think I've got a good amount of the Miami backfield. I have Jalen Wright's now my single highest owned player, but I have been trying to mix in a ton of Achane, a ton of Mostert. So, obviously as a whole offense, I love that one, but it's either Tyreek or Waddle early, or you don't really have anything. So I love taking Achane round 2 ahead of his ADP, and then I especially love Jalen Wright where he's going right now. I think that's a directional bet. It's an easy one to make after we've seen what they've done. I think that the Texans are definitely higher on my list as well. I'm trying to think if there's any other offenses that I am like fully loading up on. I wish I had more Chiefs. Like that's one that I wish I had more Rice at when he was going cheap. I don't have as much Mahomes as I'd like to have. So I don't end up with a ton of them. I do get a lot of Rams though. Like I have a good amount of Cooper Kupp in the late second, Puka if I'm down at the bottom of the first round. And I like where Stafford goes. I love Parkinson's price. I like, Kyron Williams in the third, I think is an awesome value in some of these drafts. So I'd say probably if I looked at, I should have looked, and I looked tonight, I'll let you know. But off the top of my head, I think the Rams are among my heavier exposed teams. They're one that what if they're just better? They could be better than that team that went to the Super Bowl and did they won it that year? No, or did they won with Stafford that year? He had 41 touchdowns. Like Puka wasn't even there. Kupp is all reports back to that MVP form. When Kyron was healthy last year, this was a top 3 team in points per game. It was really noticeable when he was absent. So I just think there's a world where the Rams go completely nuts, and they're just. I know Kupp's creeped up in price. I know Kyron's starting to creep up in price, but you can still get Demarcus Robinson, Colby Parkinson, Stafford at 150. That's an offense that I'm definitely loading up heavily on at their prices.
I thought for a second there you were just trying to mess with me, asking if the Rams won that Super Bowl or not. Yeah, I remember that Super Bowl.
Over there.
Yeah, we're all too well. They could very easily. The price on Stafford, we literally just saw him a couple years ago go for 5,000 yards and 41 touchdowns and finish as the QB5 in that year. So with like you said, without Puka Nacua in this offense. So a big blow up season is very much in the range of outcomes for this offense. So I probably need to get a little bit more of both. I'm definitely underweight on Nacua, but I could stand to grab some shares here. And we are on the clock once again. We can go receiver again, or just grab one of these elite quarterbacks. I'm not a super big fan of Laporta, but we can grab receiver or a quarterback here.
I like getting maybe Josh Allen. I know we do it a lot, or Tank Dell, I would say, if you're filtering by.
I'm gonna go
Allen. Allen's good with me.
All right.
Correlates with Garrett Wilson, right? The week 17 stuff, which is always solid. So whenever I get a jet to start, the only annoying thing there is now we can't really draft Rodgers. Not that I love Rodgers anyways, but they do have the same bye. So, but it does correlate that, which I like.
Getting Rodgers there isn't the end of the world.
No.
You can get by without Rodgers there.
Absolutely. So I like that. Pacheco did just go. We had a question about him. We're going to definitely mow through this mailbag, guys. Thank you again so much. Lots of good questions coming in. We did get a question are you high on Pacheco this year? So wrote about him in my draft guide. Definitely a guy that I already liked. And then the more and more this preseason has gone on, the higher and higher I've got on Isaiah Pacheco. Averaged over 22 points per game without McKinnon, who clearly does not seem to be coming back at this point. And the backups, you could just see how big of a mess this is. We have Andy Reid coming out in training camp saying, who's going to take those McKinnon snaps? The first guy he names, Pacheco. He can run all the routes. He's great in the protections. He just could do it all. And that's what we saw last year when McKinnon was out. It became the Pacheco show, no CEH, none of that. So a feature back, I mean, think about all the Andy Reid offenses we were going all in on. I love Pacheco. Definitely, we talked about him. If you go a couple episodes back, guys, we want to draft more. Huge take on Pacheco. As somebody I've been trying to beef up, I was going to recommend we go him in round 3, but he went ahead of us yet again. So I love Pacheco, though. I think he's definitely has that hero running back upside at a cheaper price tag than you normally would have to pay for it.
Are you the cheaper price tag? Let's make our pick here. I've got Flowers and Pittman at the top of the queue here.
No Kelsey interest, or
after the first detour, we can make up for it if you want to. I'm fine with that.
I think I'm happy to go with the detour. But I like Flowers if you want to get a receiver and stay in structure.
Let's go with Flowers here. So back to Pacheco though. Like the at cost being worthy of like a hero running back build, like he's going to be a staple second round pick in these home league drafts. I mean, are you comfortable at that cost? Like you could get him in late round 3 and early round 4 on Underdog for the majority of the summer. And I can very much get behind him at that price, but like I saw him go in the middle of round 2, and I've only done a handful of like my like redraft home league drafts so far. But like middle round 2, I'm starting to be a little bit more hesitant. It just seems like a small win kind of bet at that price. You really just need him to go bananas on the touchdowns, and we know what kind of pass rate we're getting out of the Chiefs offense. I can make the argument to myself so much more easily in late round 3, early round 4, like we've been getting him on Underdog, but mid round 2, I start to become a little bit more hesitant.
I think the only reason where I've warmed up to it is the clearer passing down role has helped me realize that this guy really does have that true hero upside, but it's also a combination in home leagues where receivers just fall. Like when we get to this best ball drafts, as you guys have probably seen, we call it the running back oasis in a way where there is just so many running backs from round 6 to 10 that you could just keep hammering this position over and over. Home leagues, it's not the case, but it's actually flipped where in round 6, you could get Tank Dell in home leagues. You can get round 7, Calvin Ridley, round 8, Chris Godwin, round 9, Xavier Worthy. Maybe that's not going to be the case for much longer, but there is just that kind of position scarcity really flips, whereas running backs fall and best ball as they should, given the nature of this game. But ultimately in home leagues, those running backs go so much faster. You're seeing Rashad White go in round 3, and I don't like any of that. I think that is the dead zone. There's so many good high upside receivers or onesies to go in those rounds 3 to 5 range. But then round 6 to 8, there are so many good receivers that like I actually am okay going Pacheco round 2, starting running back in home leagues, which I hadn't been for a while. But I do think he's in that group of like 6 to maybe 7 guys that really could just average 20 points a game, be a true difference maker. It will require them to run more in the red zone, which they never have done. So maybe they don't flip that ultimately, but he's also they throw it a lot. We see McKinnon catch 7 touchdowns in a year. And if he has that role, it could be, I'm really warmed up to him even in the mid-second. And I didn't think I would be, Mo, but I have, even in there in redraft.
Yeah. It's harder for me, but I understand it, especially with the depth at wide receiver in the middle rounds. I mean, there's just so many good options there. What kind of direction you think we're heading? I've always got my eye on Kyle Pitts in this range.
I think Worthy's got to be the guy. We talked about him as a huge riser. I want to add all the Worthy I can in these late drafts.
There's only one guy without a tight end in between us, so Pitts coming back to us. No, it's not a foregone conclusion that he doesn't make it back to us. So no. I'll make the push once again up here in a couple picks.
And I know you love Christian Kirk. He's probably fallen because of the calf injury. He could be a play here. We could go 5 wide receivers and really just have a loaded up. But then again, we do want to stack up Josh Allen, and we're going to be able to do that with Keaton Coleman in a couple rounds. Curtis Samuel is probably going to fall big because of this injury. So I don't know that we need to force another receiver in here. Pitts does go. I really like Ken Walker. He's another guy on that Who We Want to Draft More show a couple weeks ago I talked about. He's a guy I'm a big fan of Ken Walker here. We don't have a running back, so it looks like you're open to it too. No hesitation on your end.
I need to get more Ken Walker. I feel like just that range, not anymore with Ken Walker. It's like some of the coach speak and the narrative coming out of Seattle is making people more willing to click. But that pocket of Mixon, Rachaad White, Ken Walker, it's just no one really wants to click any of those guys' names. Just because of the efficiency stuff with White and Mixon and like the boomer bust type of stuff with Walker. And I don't know. At cost, it's much more appealing. It's in the 60s. I can justify it with all three of those guys. I mean, Mixon, like Dameon Pierce looks like complete crap behind him. Like I think it was Harditz that put out a great tweet. It was like, Pierce has had like 11 carries in the preseason, and none of them have been longer than like 3 yards. And he just looks awful. And it's just like, who's going to take away the work from these guys? And especially with Mixon, it's like he's been a top 10 guy in a quality offense because he can consolidate the important touches. And what's stopping him from doing it again? I've had this back and forth going back all the way to like June when Thaddeus brought it up on stream about getting your guys and getting Joe Mixon. And I'm at this point, I'm just like, why not in the 60s? I mean, if this guy's going to have real no challengers, like what's his path to, or what's stopping his path to a top 12 finish again this year?
I really do like this pocket, like you mentioned. Yeah, you gave the out case for Mixon, Rachaad White, very similar volume bet that. If he was going around 3-4, no, I don't like it at all. But yeah, round 6, when I have 4 good receivers and elite onesie already, like, yeah, I mean, all day, I can absolutely do it. I know Juan Pena asking for a draft grade. Great to see you, Juan. 2 Pete, he took down the title last year. Awesome to see it, Juan. Definitely check out that draft guide. I know that will help you get there. Looks like you already had one of your drafts here, though. He has Goff, Williams, Tank Dell, DJ Moore, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Kittle, Jacobs, Kyron. This pretty loaded backfield crew there. Jacoby Myers, Ridley, Ford. I like it. I don't know how many teams this is, Juan, but I really like it. And I hate Jerry Jeudy, so no, I would not drop Caleb Williams or Goff for him. Leave him be. He's one of the softest players in the league. Just a roster clogger, bad locker room presence. I think you can definitely drop one of your QBs if you want, but don't make it for Jeudy. I will never be a Jeudy guy. I'm already all the way out on him. I know some people want to keep going to it. I won't, but I say, it's tough to create a team on the fly here, but I think with Breece, Kyron, Kenneth Walker, I mean, boom, and Josh Jacobs, like that is a A+ running back room, and your receivers are a little bit, the depth kind of gets a little hit there, but you still look at that room, DJ Moore, Tank Dell, like Calvin Ridley, that's 3 solid receivers there to have those quality 4 running backs, and then those receivers. I think it's very solid. And you got Kittle, one of the last of the elite onesies. I think you did really well, Juan. I like your team a lot. I'd probably, I'm an honest guy, as you said in the quote. I'd give it a B+, maybe an A- upon further inspection, depending on how many teams it is. So, yeah, I liked it a lot.
I will give my team grade here in a second. I mean, honestly, I don't think I really need to give one. I'm kind of in line with you there. Just a phenomenal running back room, so can't complain much there. Here we have us on the clock. I want to go JSN here, and we can work some stuff out with the Seahawks later.
I guess so. I do like Ferguson, though. Is there anyone that doesn't have a tight end behind us?
No. So we can work it around.
Yeah, then get your receiver. That's fine. JSN is somebody I don't have much of, and I can see the path. A great article on RotoViz about how he could be like the next Amon-Ra and get the layup role there. And he was a great prospect last year. And maybe it was just, we're seeing Waldron start to hold back Rome. Like maybe it was just a Waldron problem. So I'm definitely open to getting more. Now we have Ken Walker too. It gives us the Geno like late stack, which is nice. I like that move. And then Shakir in a little bit. I bet you Curtis Samuel's going to fall hard because of this injury. And he probably should, turf toe. So I think we can still get a good amount of stacking with Allen. And he's one of those quarterbacks you don't need to stack all that much with either. So
yeah, we're going to have limited opportunities here. But in terms of stacking Josh Allen, hopefully we just get a slip out of Samuel here, or perhaps Shakir. We're a little bit behind. Our next draft pick is a little bit behind ADP for Shakir, and obviously well behind Samuel's ADP. But Don't expect drafters to adhere to Samuel's current cost, given the recent news, assuming everyone who is drafting a Best Ball Mania team at 8:30 p.m. on a Monday night is keeping up with their fantasy football news. I'm going to click Ferguson here.
Love Fergie here. Yeah, I think this is one of the only reasons I'm not like I have to get an elite 10 every draft, a tight end every draft, is because Ferguson, I think, is going to be just as good as all those guys going in round 4 to 6, but you get him right here and round 8. I love Ferguson. I know you've been banging the Ferguson drum all offseason. I've got an article on the site about him. He's in the draft guide. He's one of my guys. I think Ferguson is going to go down as one of the key picks of this year because of the elite upside he can bring you. But the opportunity cost is you don't have to load up until round 8. You get all those other picks in. So I love him. I think he's a great pick. I like how this one's turning out so far. I know our running backs, the thing down at I don't love the bottom of the draft, but in these drafts, Mo, like I've noticed like Chase Brown, Javonte Williams, Devin Singletary, Brian Robinson. Like I think we go running back. Maybe Shakir is going to fall to us or Curtis Samuel. So I guess we don't want to go exactly running back. But a lot of times
went at ADP.
What's that?
Curtis Samuel went at ADP.
Maybe it was an auto pick, or maybe people are just not worried about the news, or maybe they didn't know it. But yeah, I think we do want to sneak in Shakir probably in one of those. But if I don't have Allen, like I love to go running back in this like round 9 to 10 range in these best ball drafts. It is such a great pocket at the bottom of the draft. One of the few advantages of being the bottom that I see so far this year.
Yeah, the range of running backs here. It's just I'm happy with how we set up our receiver room, already having 5 here because. I mean, like we've harped on all offseason, just it's hard to not want to take multiple running backs right around pick 100. Yeah. It's real hard to not. You just have so many. You can make whatever sort of bet you want. You can bet on touches. You can bet on talent. You can bet on offenses. You can bet on ambiguity. You can do whatever you want to do. And you can like my thing is always just like having your running back room paint a picture however you start with whatever running back you grab or running backs you grab in the first couple of rounds, and you can find someone in this range that aligns with what you've already done in the draft. So I'm a big fan of hammering running back in this range as well, but I agree. Ideally we'll get Shakir here at the 106, like right on the nose with his ADP, because he is really our last stacking option with Josh Allen. Like you said, though, not the end of the world if you don't stack Josh Allen, but I'll always like to get at least one piece of the offense, regardless of the rushing capabilities of your quarterback.
Yeah, and a lot of reports saying the most trusted, the carryover from last year has made him the go-to guy. He's making those throws that you really have to show pure trust in your receiver if you're going to make them. That he's burning their top corners throughout all training camp, and the healthiest right now too. So I'm all about it. Unless there's a running back that falls that we don't think is going to make it back, but we think Shakir would. Jaylen Warren, we see the injury impact there going right ahead of us. I would have said maybe we consider him. But yeah, I think we lock up Shakir. Get our stacking option, and then we figure out what running back we want to go.
Right on ADP, and then we can grab a running back, whoever is there for us in this next pick.
Yeah, and Wes, thank you so much for getting the guide. Love the guide, but 120 pages, bananas. I know I was literally in a hole for like a week and a half writing this thing. So I'm glad you enjoy it. Anybody else out there, if you like my content, you enjoy the way we think about the game, you got my Fantasy Soul, 120 pages. We update it. I update it. I'm going to have the preseason week 2 update out in your inboxes tomorrow. So it's not like you buy the guide and now it's stale and you got a magazine off the shelf. No, it's we're going to keep updating this thing with all the news, the notes, the Xavier Worthy, all the stuff we talked about tonight will be worked in there for sure. But thank you so much. We got a couple people in here talking about repeating championships. That's what we get here at rotostreetjournal.com. A lot of belts, a lot of titles. We're going to keep firing those things up. All righty. I know it is our pick here. I like Singletary, especially because we don't really have a running back 2 yet. I'd rather just bank on a guy getting 15 to 20 touches, like lock it in. I saw you had Spears higher, definitely a more exciting player, but I mean, especially after that preseason, like 88% of snaps, 100% of touches, like We're getting him at 110, like a running back too. Sweet, let's go.
I'm sorting by ADP just for you. Don't worry. I know you like to look at it based on ADP, so I've had us locked into based on ADP. It's like going back to the painting a picture. This team just kind of needs some touches. You got the home run nature there. You got the home run capability there with Ken Walker and what I hope to be a stable RB2 this season in Devin Singletary. Last season, after he took over for Damian Pierce, it was week 9, I believe. But down that stretch, Singletary, the RB13 in total points and the RB21 in points per game. So obviously a much, much better offense, but very capable of delivering R2 production and just kind of being that compiler type, just grabbing all the touches, ripping off a play here and there, hopefully, and punching it in. He did get all the end zone work and the end zone usage in that last preseason game. So encouraging to see that they're using him at the goal line. And so if he just consolidates the touches, I mean, at pick 111, sign me up. Why not?
Yep, exactly. I think it definitely for this build makes so much sense. Even as a flex, if it was our 3, 4, you can start to maybe consider higher upside guys. But I don't think he's just like, yeah, it's a high floor. It doesn't mean there's no ceiling to Singletary either. We've seen him under Daboll have plenty of 20-point days. So I'm a huge fan of him. Huge value here where we got him. We talked about this one. You don't know if you caught it. Earlier, we did talk about the idea that all the buzz right now is Drake May might be the starter. I love what I saw in that preseason game. You saw the legs when we ran one in. You saw that release where that thing floated right off his hand. Javon Baker should have made the play. I worry about the line being god-awful, the weapons being horrendous around him, and I don't want to throw him into a fire that just like is such a crap storm around him and then have him crater to it. But the way he plays, he seems to have that it factor that, yeah, he might need a few more pieces around him to really hit that ceiling, but get him out there. Let's get him going. I'm happy to have him start week 1, even though it's a murderer's row of the first few weeks. A lot of people are saying, like, yeah, maybe week 1 or after the first 4 weeks, they get the Dolphins at home and 4 straight home games. Maybe that's where we see him actually start in week 5 and move from there. But I'd love to see Drake May. I know your best ball bags would probably like to see Drake May right from the jump, right? You've got a good amount of him.
I'm okay if he doesn't play week 1. See the Cincinnati traffic cones go out there in their all orange uniforms and just pummel Jacoby Brissett for a week, and then we'll get Drake May out there.
Yeah.
And my best ball bags will be pleased with him being out on the field. But yeah, I don't need to see him out there for the week 1 pummeling against my Bengals. But legitimately, yeah, I would like to see him play as many games as possible. You can debate back and forth with a wall about whether or not it's beneficial for guys to get out there or sit behind a veteran for a couple of weeks or a month or 2 months or years even. But I think he should get out there. They got to see what they have in this guy and hopefully build a plan to build around him. But here we are about to be on the clock. I don't have any preference in terms of just like structure or directionally. We can go running back here. There's a couple of names here that I
do like AD Mitchell. I know we have a lot of receivers, but he's somebody I want to kind of bump up on these last few drafts, playing the slot, explosive guy. I think we'll get a Zeke or Eckler on the way back too. Why don't you hit him before we run out of time?
Yeah. And then what's the slot thing mean to you? Like it's going to be a couple weeks before Downs gets back, even if he's hurt, like not hurt, but even if Downs is like playing to less of his 100%, he's gonna be in the slot. Like and I agree, like Mitchell will be the wide receiver 3 at some point, but the slot doesn't mean much to me. It's I don't know.
It tells me the team wants him out there. They want him getting reps. Like he's building some chemistry. And all the reports are like he's really starting to turn a corner and thrive right now. So I guess we could have gone Zeke and then Eckler, but it's like, do we need 2 old dusty guys or do we just take one of them? And I'll let you take whichever one you want because I do think some more volume makes sense on this squad.
I have stuck little Eckler.
You want to do a little Eckler?
I have such little Eckler, so I went Eckler. I just I don't want to buy Eckler, but I need a little bit. That's really all it is. And I have more Zeke than I probably should.
I have so
Dowdle's flipped him at this point, and I think rightfully so. I was taking a fair amount of Zeke, and now he's falling, so it kind of hurts in terms of that CLV, but it is what it is. I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at in terms of my shares of this Dallas backfield as a whole. This is kind of one you want to be taking stabs at, just in terms of what we think this is going to be in terms of an offensive quality. So I don't mind losing what it ended up being like 10 picks of ADP value in the 11th, 12th round that I'm missing out on. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world either.
No, exactly. I have a ton of Zeke. He's probably my third or fourth highest on running back, so I am trying to bump that down. I am trying to get more Dowdle, so I have at least have bets on the whole backfield. But it really wouldn't surprise me if Zeke gets like 250 touches and a great offense, and he doesn't do much with them, but he scores and he gets 60-ish yards, and he's just like a 12-point guy that has some value in best ball. I know it's a ceiling game, and yet it also have to have some of those guys that just consistently churn you the double-digit points, as unsexy as it might be. We skip him over saying Pickens over T. Higgins. I think before seeing just how abysmal this offense looked this weekend, I probably would, he's the clear number one. I love Pickens as a player. I think he's phenomenal. I look at this though, and I just like that team is something I might just stay completely away from for the rest of my drafts. Like it was a preseason game. You don't want to overreact, but Russell looked horrible. Fields looked terrible. And the only time Fields didn't look terrible is because he was running the ball, not throwing it. So I'm kind of on the train of like, I don't really want any of these guys. I'd rather have Xavier Worthy over both these guys, honestly, because I don't even like T. Higgins that much. I think he's a fine player, but the clear number two, I don't – maybe he's back and healthy too. And we see Chase kind of holding out right now. If that leads to a slow start for him, I'm going T. Higgins over Pickens, no doubt at this point, though. How do you feel about this as a Bengals fan?
I have a question to ask first. I don't know if you saw it or not, but guess where Justin Fields ranked in terms of time to throw throughout these first two preseason games?
It's got to be the worst, or like isn't Caleb Williams like worse though? But it's way different because Caleb, is that what it is? What's the answer to that? I know he's got
it is dead last, and Williams is second to last.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I saw something about it. It's just the difference though. And I think it's a great point. When we talk about Williams, I had meant to say like his time to throw, I get that stat, but it's so different from him where he's poised in the pocket. He is looking downfield. He's making a man miss, resetting, and like they're just a calm coolness. Like he looks like a 20-year veteran the way he's operating in the pocket and keeping the eyes downfield. And I don't mind him holding the ball because he's not panicking. Field starts to panic, and it's just like he's flailing and he's rolling all around and he's throwing things to defenders. Like it's a much – not all time holding on to the ball is created equal, and that is a huge – like I see how close they are on that, and I think it couldn't be more opposite of what it actually looks like when you're watching them hold on to the ball.
Yeah. I think I said it last week, but it does really look like Fields is out there on a half-second tape delay. It's not pretty. And I think you said it perfectly. Not all seconds in the pocket are created. I've got Ray Davis queued up here. It's right on the nose of ADP.
Let's get him. Let's not risk him falling. It's a Bills-built team. We talked about him as a riser for a reason tonight. And the guy can catch too. I know we haven't seen it much this preseason, but there's definitely a world where he's throwing some touchdowns to him.
100%.
So what do we have? Do we have any tight ends yet? What did we do at tight end?
Yeah, we got Ferguson.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to do a Fant Geno thing, but Fant went like ridiculously high considering he's been hurt and the buzz hasn't really been there. So Fant's off the board. Do you want to go Geno here? He's really like the last like stack that we don't have to set up already. Like we would have to do like either Denver.
How early are we on Geno? Probably not too early, right?
We're like 8 picks.
Yeah, I say just do it. We have
I
enough investment in this offense. And he's somebody that can get sniped. I've seen him fall too to like 180s, but there's no reason to play that game. Like, look at who's available to us. There's nothing on the board. Like, oh no, we didn't get Adam Thielen. Like, I don't care. Like, give me my stack. Let's complete it. Let's now we're set at quarterback. Like,
exactly.
It feels good. I like this for sure.
Yeah.
And I think we got to start considering tight end in the next round. Maybe like
100%.
Conklin for the week 17 bring back. He could be an option. I know my guy John, who's always great these late rounds. I know he's kind of split in time too, so I'm trying to tone him down just a little bit. I love Colby Parkinson in the late rounds too. He's a guy that I'm really gravitating towards as something. Do I get Tom up here shouting out the fact we got him Kyron last year? That was definitely one of our guys. That panned out huge. It couldn't have panned out any better. You get to keep him for an 8th. The only way it pans out better is when you get to benefit for the next year because you got him. So love to see that. 8th round keeper, even better, Tom. The only reason that's better is like I had a couple leagues where I actually took him in the 16th, not really projecting him as a keeper. And now he is a 16-round keeper because I know some leagues where it's a waiver wire pickup, you can only do 8th or better. Well, hey, I drafted him. He's round 15, and now I get him for $1 in an auction and a round 15 pick and a snake. Oh, nothing better, though. Kyron was one of our true poster boys last year. He really came through for us and therefore for you guys that listened to our advice on him. I love Kyron to death. Him and Puka, the boys of 2024.
Yeah, don't forget about Tank Dell. I got to give you the credit on a lot of those late round hits.
We hit big on those late rounds last year. That was as good as you can do, I think.
My success was in the fades last year. I somehow managed to avoid the landmines in round 1.
Pat Mahomes was one of your fades. Eckler was one of your fades. Like,
yeah,
I remember seeing your list and I was like, "What the hell? Like, what? We're about to go through this?" Like, and it was brilliant.
Ended up paying off. The pessimist in me worked out, but moving on here, I do think Tyler Conklin is a good fit for this team. I'm hoping we can get him here with our next pick. And I apologize here. Let me scroll down on the draft board. We need to address the position. Perhaps we could push him around. You both of the guys ahead of us have 2 tight ends and both have an elite tight end. So I would say we can push him around to 183 if he does make it back to us at 178.
Anything that we really like. Like, I always think that's like, it's fun to push to like give yourself a little sweat during the draft, but it's also like, if there's got to be something that makes it like a receiver where like McMillan falls or, somebody we wanted to add. Okay, yeah, but let's make sure it's worth something that we're pushing him for. If we're gonna push, because it doesn't make sense. That's good foresight to see it, but let's make sure there's somebody.
What's the thrill of a BBM draft if you're not trying to get ADP value at pick 178? I mean, what are you doing? I mean, we're going to spend 2 hours. Yeah. Exactly. We're going to spend 2 hours doing this tonight, and we're not going to try and push Tyler Conklin around to grab a couple 5 more picks of ADP value.
I didn't get to the gym this morning, so I do need a little bit of a sweat. You're right. There he goes.
He goes anyways. It doesn't even matter. Do you still want to go tight end? I know you like Hunter Henry. He might go right here, though. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, we're seeing him fly. I do like Hunter Henry, though. I think it's a great pick. Yeah, would you want to show me the best available?
Oh, yeah. And he goes anyways.
Damn.
Yeah, so here are our options. We can go running back. I don't mind Herbert to pair up with our Seattle stuff we've got going on.
I think that's great. Yeah. And then, what if he does get cut and goes to the Cowboys, but yeah, he correlates great. If Swift's injury bug nips. I don't think we had any Chicago Bears to go with that. So I like that. I mean, we are in the range. I don't hate Jonnu here, but I don't think we get to force it. Like Parkinson in round 17 is just as good to me. Juwan Johnson's fine. So I almost like I feel like this is where receiver, if you don't get your Yoshi, your Greg Dortch, or your Jalen Tolbert, I don't know if he's even still out there.
No, Tolbert went in the 14th round.
Oh, good Lord.
Or no, it might have been earlier. It might have been earlier than that. I'll go look.
Like, you look at these receivers, though, this is hideous, other than Yoshi. So, I mean, this is kind of where it's like, I'd like to get Yoshivach. We have 8 great receivers we feel good about.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think I know it doesn't really mean much to our team, but like I like in terms of correlation, I think Yoshi's the play here.
He went undrafted for the first 60% of the fill of BBM. I mean, might as well just grab him while you can. He's looking like he'll at least get the nod for the week 1 wide receiver 3 job. And people don't want to buy into the talent as much, but I mean, dude's an athletic freak, and the Bengals didn't have that in Tyler Boyd in these last couple of years. And I don't know. I think Yoshi, he would be an enormous slot. Like, he is a huge dude, and it's just it's something the Bengals haven't had in these last couple of years. So I don't know. Interesting. Oh, and Jalen Tolbert did go in round 12. Pretty wild to see, like, just another guy who was being undrafted for many months of this process.
Not by me. I have 15% Tolbert. He's like my 5th or 6th highest receiver, and most of those were early shares.
I was only doing them with Dak and CD, so I was only getting them here and there.
Yeah, it was kind of. I mean, I also have a ton of Dak from my early drafts too.
I know you do. I know
that was a big part of it as well. Christopher saying Drake May needs to learn game flow, probably the playbook, but other than that, great arm mobility underrated. Yeah, I think that kind of summarizes him perfect. And if he has that game flow and playbook down by week 1, let's get him out there. I think game flow wise, he was kind of showing me that this guy can roll with the punches. He stays cool. He stays collected under pressure. Like I mean, it's early, so I can't say he's fully checked the box yet, Chris, right? But I like what I've seen so far. It's a matter, does he learn the playbook or not? But sounds like he's very much progressing huge in that area too. So Charlie coming in saying Wolf Mo cost ADP aside, who's QB1, and then he also says drafting Allen there probably answers my question, LOL. And I think it answers the question for me at least. It's Allen. You cited the stat a few times, Mo, that like 4 straight years, 4 top 10 all time QB finishes, like QB1 or better.
QB1. QB1 3 out of the last 4 years.
Yeah. It's 40 combined touchdowns in 4 straight. Like, it's automatic, and I know the weapons aren't there, but I don't think he's just one of those guys that's going to elevate whoever's with him. And
it's like, it's obviously like not 1-to-1. Like, obviously Stephon Diggs like has impact on how defenses play the Bills, and we'll make our pick here before I continue with this. We got to go running back and a tight end. You want to just grab Parkinson?
Yeah, let's get Parkinson. I know the other teams ahead of us have their 2 tight ends and probably wouldn't go him, but how many running backs are here that were like, I mean, I guess let me see if there's any running backs.
Grab the running back. This guy's only got 3. Let's grab the running back.
Is there anybody you want to show me the board?
Yeah, Tracy.
We have Singletary. Otherwise, I'd say that's a hammer.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Roshan, but we have Khalil. We can do Madison.
There. No, Madison ever. Just get Shipley, I guess. I don't know.
I'm fine with Shipley. But going back to the Josh Allen thing, even when Stephon Diggs was struggling, he didn't clear 100 yards after week 6. He was average from week 6 and on, or week 7 and on. Diggs was averaging like 52 yards a game, and so obviously like it's not perfect 1-to-1 projecting, like, or just like science, whatever you want to call it. But Diggs was struggling and Allen was still thriving. He was averaging over 24 points a game from week 7 on, 24.8 to be exact. So he was fine, even when Stephon Diggs was a non-factor in this offense in terms of his overall and total production. So I understand that the weapons aren't there like they have been in the past, but his rushing ability and his usage at the goal line, I think it just insulates his fantasy value. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him get out and scramble a little bit more often. And I mean, they're going to make up for it. They'll be okay. And Josh Allen is easily my QB1.
Yeah, his rushing splits, I don't have them off the top of my head. I know they're in the guide, and I know you have the guide, Charlie. Thank you so much I think you might have been the first person to actually buy the guide, Charlie. Like right 2 seconds within the posting, I saw the Charlie Menelakis has purchased the guide. Come across the feed. So thank you so much for the support every year, my guy. I break it down. Yeah, I think Parkinson's definitely the play, by the way. We already took him. Perfect. So I forget him off the top of my head, but I know under Joe Brady, he was on pace for like almost like 20 rushing touchdowns, something crazy, and probably unsustainable, but his rushing went up big. And Joe Brady's talked about, like, I like to use my quarterbacks with dual threats like this. So I think it's definitely Allen. I mean, I do think this is a year, and another thing that we talk about in the guide is like I've totally changed my quarterback philosophy. That it used to always be wait on QB. It's so deep, and you still can. There are some deep flyers, and I love Jayden Daniels. We talked about him earlier, like round 9. If you miss on the elites, but I really do think this is a year where it makes sense to get that edge if you can get a round 3 Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, of course. I think you can also lump Mahomes and Lamar into that tier of like round 3 or 4. The way the receiver depth is in redraft, like you can get those guys, and they are just going to get you 25 a week, and it is so valuable to get an edge like that. And maybe Daniels does pan out like I love him late, but I used to be, you had to wait on QB, you had to take 2 bell cows, and like I've become a much more flexible drafter over these last few years because the NFL's evolved. And I think this is a year where an elite QB and elite tight end is going to make a big difference, I think, in fantasy. So, I mean, we've done a bunch of Josh Allen teams, so I imagine you kind of subscribe to the elite QB where appropriate. In our Roto Street League, right?
Yeah, I subscribe to the draft Josh Allen whenever he's sort of around his ADP for the last several years. You're
never going to regret it. Like he played every game, and he always puts up a ton of points. Like, what more can you ask for?
Exactly. I have subscribed to Josh Allen supremacy for a good while now. I had him in 2020 when he broke out in a bunch of leagues, and yeah, that's my guy. It's like definitely like personal bias to a degree, but I mean, it doesn't even matter if it's personal bias. The dude literally has posted 4 straight top 10 seasons of all time. And he's at a depressed price this year. I will continue riding the Josh Allen wagon until the wheels fall off. The advantage of hammering an elite quarterback has proven itself and paid off in recent years. And perhaps you could find some elite quarterback options in later rounds, like Anthony Richardson, but I will be sticking with my guns on this one and taking Josh Allen as my top quarterback. And like you said, I backed it up, put my money where my mouth was. I took him at the 303 in our staff league draft. So that kind of perfectly segues us into this draft. You want to? Is there anything else in the mailbag you want to get to, or do you want to get to reviewing this team here?
I think Charlie has one good question about Tank Dell too, or a comment rather. But the other part of the elite QB, the one other thing that I think goes with this, and again, what we talk about in the guide is like, I have very full confidence in whether it's my late round drafting, my waiver wire skills, or a combination of both. I know in best ball, the waiver wire does not exist, but especially in redraft where I know I'm always going to find those guys. I do it better than my league in almost every single league I'm in. So why not lock in those earlier round elite edges, especially at quarterback and tight end, where I know I'm going to find somebody in the draft late, or I'm going to find them on waiver wires. Just a huge edge. The only other thing Charlie mentioned was feed me all the negative Tank Dell news, drive down his ADP. I fully agree with that. Even if he's only on the field for 3 receiver sets, one of my favorite values. Going in redrafts right now, 5-6. Like if he continues to fall, even better. But even if not, I love him where he is. I think it's it's going to get overblown. I think it's going to be 70% of the time 3 wide receiver sets. I don't mind Tank Dell not being out there throwing his tiny body around and blocking. That's fine. If he only has to be out there for pass catching, like that's what ruined his year last year was let's put this guy at fullback and let him run into the line and then he's done. Like I don't need that anymore. That's fine. Okay, get off for 3 receiver sets or get off for 2 receiver sets, and it's only coming when they're throwing it. I don't even know if I view that as a negative for Tank Dell because he is so damn explosive. He's such an elite separator. He's great with the ball in his hands. Like he is him. He is the man. I'm in love with Tank Dell. So if he's only playing 70% of the routes, sweet. Like that means he's at least out there when he's actually going to matter. I have no issue with this. I'm with you, Charlie. Drive the price down, please. Like that's when we keep putting in the fallers maybe category. And I'm just like, I cannot talk about Tank Dell as a faller because in preseason he was out there for 8 of 15. No. He is the man. I know you're a Tank Dell. You said, he's like your second highest owned receiver or something like that? Like
my first highest owned receiver right now. Nico Collins is a close second. Like I said, I've just got everything related to the Houston Texans this year.
And you should. I think it's one of the best. And I think I texted you about this. I think one of the best things in best ball, one of the biggest, I think somebody's going to win that. We did it in one of our drafts. I've done it a few times where if you can push the Stroud fall because you notice that like Diggs and you have two of the receivers and Diggs went after you, so you can like let him slide. I've got him at 82 this weekend. Like I think those teams that got like CJ Stroud in the 8th because they played the board the right way and he fell to him is going to be those teams, because I think he's going to throw over 5,000 yards. I think he's going to probably throw over 40 touchdowns. So I think the CJ Stroud, like the teams that let him fall, are going to be so damn good this year. They're going to be hard to top. Like that's like one of the biggest best ball edges. But yeah, we want to get a team grading time. But again, Charlie, shout out, easiest $10 click of the season. Guy pays itself every year, many times over. So thank you so much. And anybody that does want to check out that guide, I got a great feedback on it so far. rotostreetjournal.com/draft guide with no spaces, or you can just go to the website. You'll find it there, rotostreetjournal.com. It'll be right there at the top. It's pinned on my Twitter feed. I promise you, for $10, it'll bring you the value that you seek. And if it doesn't, I will refund you. I'm not here to not deliver on what I bring. And I think everybody that's read it so far, I've got a lot of random people to retweet it, and it's awesome. And I just appreciate it so much. And a quick keeper question for Trent B. And anybody else has questions, we're going to do our team grades here and review what we could have done differently. I honestly don't know that there's much I would have done differently, though, with this team. But Trent asking, keeper league, I kept CD. I got the 4th pick. I believe I'll be able to get one of these 4, Jefferson, Barkley, Chase, or Breece. McCaffrey was left over, so he will more than likely be the first pick. All right. So of these guys, Jefferson, Barkley, Chase, or Breece, especially if you already start CD, I'm going Breece. I think that's an awesome elite. You got your A+ wide receiver 1. Now you lock in Breece Hall, who I think is maybe the best threat to take over CMC as the number 1. I still have CMC 1. I'm not going to go that crazy and say Christian McCaffrey is not the best running back to take. He is. But Breece is my number 2. He's actually a clear number 2 for me. He's separated from Bijan in that sense. To me, I am definitely starting CD. Starting Breece. You've got elite edges at those multiple starter positions. You also mentioned it's a 10-team league, Trent, in your next comment, and that's like, I just think the one of the biggest edges you can possibly get is if you do find one of those true 3-down talented workhorses. The line's better this year. Rodgers should make this be a better offense, and Breece is perhaps the most explosive back in the league, certainly a size speed terror. So to me, if Breece is there, it's an easy one. I think Jefferson would be my next pick. I have Jefferson over Chase, but I'm going Breece if he's there. There's no doubt. What about you, Mo? Do you have any different?
Cut and dry, Breece for me.
Yeah.
don't need to think about it much with CD already on the team. Honestly, yeah, that's all I have to say. Easy, real easy.
Really easy.
Yeah. So moving on to our team here. We've got we start out the draft just playing the ADP game. Just neither of us have massive stands in the first round. Just kind of grab who's there in terms of ADP. So we go Wilson at 10, which is typical. And then
I did want to ask you, Mo, because I like brought up the question, but then we had to like kind of breeze past it. If you are 11 or 12, I don't have a good answer to this. Like, especially with it used to be easy Puka before he got hurt, and I think he's going to be fine. Gibbs at 12 before he got hurt. But now with these injuries popping up, like it's kind of time to get weird with it, and we know what the ADP is. So have you experimented or like done anything strange with these injuries, and it's kind of unclear like what to do at the bottom of the draft, or do you just kind of click whatever's at the top still?
I'll do stuff with the Texans. I know it's
of course.
Yeah, I do stuff with. I'll grab Nico at 13. I'll grab Achan at 15 sometimes. I don't get too crazy, but other than those two guys are like the only two guys I'm getting too out of line on ADP with. I don't agree with the Debo being 13 picks higher than Ayuk. That's not something that really computes for me, just in terms of like, I have never been on the trade, the wagon that this trade is going to go through. I've started to think it's more realistic, and now I'm starting to think it's not going to happen at all again. And I don't know. I don't think that there should be a 15 slot gap in ADP, but I understand why there is. But no, I don't get too weird other than really just kind of Nico and Achan here and there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Achan is definitely somebody I've worked in there. I think Nico, because I do like doing something weird with Nico where you get Nico at 13, you get another Texan in
Exactly.
round
That's
3.
why I do it. Yeah.
You can get like another Texan, a Zay, and a Lamar. You can get a really weird, like crazy game stack with it, which I do like a lot. I had been before Gibbs got hurt. I was doing a bit of Debo and Gibbs to like week 17 correlation with those two, but then Gibbs got hurt. I guess the guy that is bumped in there a bit for me is Jonathan Taylor. And certainly in redraft, I like Taylor there. I like Saquon at the end of drafts, redraft wise. But where receivers are at such a premium, it's tricky to go that detour. But I am getting more and more sold. Like the more it's like Trey Sermon's not really – the backups are just so unimpressive there. And as long as Taylor's healthy, and I think this offense is going to go nuts, the playoff schedule is crazy. I am getting a little worried that like I'm light on Taylor and that when you hit the playoffs, I mean, I forget the exact order of it, but I know it's like the Giants is week 17, and then it's 2 other cream puffs. The Titans are one of them, and their run defense took a huge hit. And might be the Jags in 15. Like it's just bad defense after bad defense for the playoffs. So I'm mixing a lot more Taylor there. I'm still, though, a lot of times, like if Puka falls, I love getting the Puka Marvin Harrison combo. Yeah. I'm not panicking on Puka. I think he's going to be ready for week 1. So that's kind of become my go-to if I can get the Puka Marv. But I see it only typically works at 12 because if Puka's there, because I think most people are just like locking in Marv at the 12 pick at this point. So, yeah, it's just interesting. That could be a whole other show. It's like what to do at 11, 12 now that it's cratered. But it's definitely a tricky debate with these injuries starting to pop up here. But yeah, that's why 10's nice because it's like whoever it is at 10, I'm just going to take. Sometimes it's A.J. Brown. Sometimes it's Garrett Wilson. Maybe one of Brees or Bijan fall. But I'm taking whoever it is. It's nice and simple. Take them.
Yep. Kind of marching forward here with our draft review. We go with the elite quarterback. I think we kind of adequately covered that. Easy click as the QB1 for me and for you as well. And then we continue to address our wide receiver room with 2 young budding players here. Zay Flowers, hopeful he makes a second-year emergence in this potent Baltimore offense. Not a click I super love, but I get it. And I need to just start just taking him at ADP. I've shied away from him throughout the majority of the draft season, but
even with all your Texans, you haven't gotten a ton of Zay?
No, I have not, unfortunately. It's been too many game stacks with Rashad Bateman, unfortunately. But I need to take more of them. And then Worthy, I think the preseason discussion earlier in the show and the tape on you can find everywhere speaks for itself.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I've been in a lot of drafts where I see him go like 48, like even sometimes in like the early, like the late 4th. So when he falls this far where he was going anyways, I'm going to scoop him every time. And I'll even push him up there on draft boards. I did hear a crazy stat. It was, I think Rich Rebar was on with Pat and Eric on their legendary Sicko show. Awesome episode. It's like they always go like 2.5 hours, but it's a great like long commute type of show. It was something along the lines of the Ravens trailed for only I think 80 total snaps last year. On the entire season, they were trailing for only 80 snaps, and
it was with Lamar on the field.
And Lamar was only on the field for about like 45 of those. Like there was a game where they trailed where he was off. So like legitimately Lamar trailed for 45 snaps.
It was second half snaps.
Yeah, second half. Yeah, even still. Like that is absolutely bonkers. Like they didn't have to throw. And we saw like in the first half, Monken liked to push the aerial game. And this defense lost some core pieces. So I mean, to more likely than not be in more shootout style scenarios. We saw it in the playoffs against the Chiefs where they were playing from behind. Zay Flowers went bananas. Like, I just think there's a lot of sneaky value to the passing game between Andrews, Flowers, Lamar. There's no way. You cannot be that – just natural regression-wise, they cannot only be trailing for 45 second-half snaps this year. Maybe they do. Maybe they are that elite, but based on the talent they lost. So I'm definitely into Zay and Lamar and all these pieces loading them up in these drafts. We then got to Ken Walker, my favorite guy now in this round, 6 to 8 running back range. Guy I'm trying to add a ton of as they hype him up as like a 3-down back now. I've never been a Charbonnet guy. I never got the hype on him. And Walker's just so damn explosive. So I love him. I love him in this grub offense. I love betting on the Seattle offense. I love when I find a play caller that I think could just flip things in very unique and interesting ways. Well, that's Ryan Grubb to me this year. That's why we also have JSN in the next round and Gino later. I think this is an offense that you asked me like who I'm most loaded up on is the Rams. Who I wish I had a lot more of is the Seahawks. It's an offense that I feel really good about, and I don't love my exposures to. That I'm trying to bet them up a little bit bigger here. So I think both those picks back to back, tons of good hype in camp and good talents that I believe in. Sweet Ferguson. We've already talked a million hours on Ferguson, but the guy, if you don't get an elite tight end and Fergie's there in round 9, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's the easiest click you can possibly do. Elite tight end price or value potential at round 9 price all day. And then we stacked up Shakir, who could very well be their number 1 receiver. How do you feel about like Coleman versus Shakir? Like Coleman goes so early, and I get it. He's the rookie, so maybe he's the most exciting. But I if I had to bet like one or the other straight up who's scoring more fantasy points, I think I bet it on Shakir. And we get him 2 rounds later. I think Shakir's the better fantasy player this year.
I'm gonna be honest. My biggest bet in this offense was Curtis Samuel, and I'm gonna have to refocus and start picking up shares of other guys after the turf toe injury. Not ideal. And honestly, like the preseason usage was making me a little bit nervous on Samuel, and his price steaming up from that Shakir like 110 range all the way up into the 80s was making me nervous as well. I texted you the other day. We were talking about like this situation. I don't like really any of the prices for this offense. Like I know I want to have pieces of it, but there is not one guy. Like I said, I was grabbing a lot of Samuel when he was in the 100s, but I don't enjoy it in the mid 80s. So I don't have a super strong stand here, but I think the safest bet is definitely Shakir. Obviously, the upside with Coleman is higher and the ceiling is higher, so I think it's justified that he goes ahead. 35 picks, I'm not so sure if that's justified, but going as the number 1 option, definitely. But I don't really have a super strong take on this. Unless you have something else to add, I can move on to this next range of our draft.
No, I don't. I do think, though, because they're so cheap and it is a Josh Allen offense, like if we get the Josh Allen of old, like somebody is – and maybe it is like the Chiefs where it's like Mahomes was great and yet nobody was the answer last year. Mahomes it could be great. That certainly could be possible. But I think somebody's going to emerge. And Coleman's the higher upside play as the rookie, but I think Shakir is the boring option, but the standover that he trusts might end up being like, damn, we should have all been on this a lot more. I really like Shakir. That's another one I'm trying to bump up.
Yeah, I agree. But moving on here, Singletary, we needed some touches in this backfield. We kind of outlined how preseason usage indicates he is going to be dominating said touches. So that kind of lines up perfectly. I don't have much to say on Adonai Mitchell, to be honest. I liked him coming out of college. I just really thought he was an exciting prospect in terms of his just overall skill set. I didn't super love the landing spot in Indianapolis, and the Josh Downs injury is a plus, and I think he ends up as the wide receiver 3 by season's end. What sort of value that has, I don't know. But in best ball, I can see it. I guess over these last 6 sentences, I've talked myself into Adonai Mitchell here. But in best ball, I can see it with a guy like an arm like Anthony Richardson and just enjoying the talent that Adonai Mitchell brings to the table. So it's not a guy I've been clicking a ton. Perhaps I should be more, especially with his ADP basically lining up perfectly with what you can do with Anthony Richardson earlier in drafts.
Yeah, it is just an offense that I think is going to be top 7, maybe top 5 in points. And I want pieces of it. And I don't love Pittman at his price. I think there's far more opportunity cost there. I don't mind Downs at all at the prices he's now falling to. A.D. Mitchell seems like the highest upside bet, and I look around it and I'm just like, yeah, I want rookies on my team because of the back-weighted production. I want pieces of this offense. We have the Giants thing going with Singletary there, so it's like a nice little back-to-back correlation in that sense. It's just somebody I don't have much of that I could see being that rookie that just starts to go ham. And yeah, in redraft, I don't know that you'll ever be able to reliably stick him in your lineup. I think in best ball, we're going to get some 20-point days out of him. And the cannon-armed Richardson, it works out for him. Eckler was that kind of volume bet. Hit him for Zeke. I think I probably prefer Zeke in a vacuum, but I think ownership-wise, I'm with you where it's I have way more Zeke than Eckler. Let's add some Eckler shares here, even though he's probably more of a contingent bet. It's going to be interesting to see how that goal line roll shakes out, though. We've talked about that at one episode. We had the Brian Robinson debate a few episodes back. If it is Robinson, he's going to be a great value. But if Eckler becomes a thorn in the goal line side, that could be deadly. We already talked about Ray Davis a ton tonight. One of the biggest risers of week 2. Looks so damn good. And we have a Bills team. Let's get him in there. I think it's great. So I think all those picks make sense. Geno's an easy stack. And I liked how we paused on that and just thought real quick. It's yeah, we're going 8 ahead of ADP. Yeah, we could probably play the game of sweating it out and hoping he makes it to us. Or you just get the guy because you look at here, it makes sense to do that if there is someone you truly, truly love on the board. There's nobody. I mean, I like Jaleel McLaughlin, and you do too. But, we had fine running backs at that point. We didn't need a Jaleel. And so, yeah, getting Geno stacked up was so much more valuable to this team. So, yeah, I think that was a great pick too.
Yeah, I'm not getting boxed out of this stack for Jaleel McLaughlin. That's just not smart. And then our following pick just correlates as well. It's to go along with the Week 17 correlation with the Seattle stack. We grab Herbert there. Backfield's looking a little bit messier than people may have anticipated, so perhaps some standalone value for Herbert. The often injured Swift or maybe even a trade. Provide some potential upside for Herbert there. And
he's
then,
just good too. When you get that good back this late,
constantly efficient.
It's an easy bet to make because there's going to be a floor and there's certainly a ceiling with that too. So he's good, and you don't see too many good backs this late.
Yeah, and then we followed up with just another guy, a friend of the show, Andre Yoshivas. We've been grabbing him here in these last couple weeks as he's solidified himself as the wide receiver 3, at least to start the year in Cincinnati. And like I said on the show before, he wasn't really being drafted for the first 60% of BBM drafts. So pretty big priority to get this guy on the teams right now. My opinion, Shipley kind of just flinging stuff at the wall here. Not a whole lot of rhyme or reason in terms of correlation. Some positive stuff coming out of him running with the ones and not an impossible guy in Kenneth Gainwell to beat out for the RB2 job behind Saquon, and a mildly intriguing talent, but more just a bet on him being able to beat Gainwell and be the RB2 in a high-end offense.
Yeah, it's a tricky range at this point. I prefer Tracy certainly in a vacuum. He's a guy I would have taken there, but we already have Singletary. If we're betting on Singletary, ideally, Tracy's not a huge thorn in his side. So I would have normally gone Tracy there. I did see Foreman go a little bit later, and that reminded me, maybe I do want to start bumping Foreman into these late rounds. But Will Shipley's another one. You outlined the case perfectly for him. And we have Ferguson, too. So there's a slight Week 17 thing going on there. I often do click Dylan Laube here, but I don't need more than it. My bag is very firmly packed, and I don't know that I feel great about how heavily it is. So, yeah, I think Shipley's a good one to be adding there. Estime went the pick before him. He's kind of become my staple in this round, but he went just right before him too. So I think Shipley's a good one. Vidal was sometimes falling here, so maybe he's another one I can start to click here. Parkinson winds it down, the clearest number 1 tight end based on resting with the starters, a great tight end too. I used to hate the late round tight end crops for so long, so that's why I was I really like to have 2 tight ends throughout the first 14, 15, buy Hunter Henry. That's kind of the line. I don't feel great about if I don't get a Henry or Jonnu. But now Parkinson's made it that if I punt it, I can get him. I don't even mind Theo Johnson now starting for the Giants. I'm not a Dulcich guy, never will be. Always such a little bitch. But Like I think Parkinson's made it much more. I could stomach punting my second tight end because him, Juwan Johnson, Theo Johnson. There's guys I now feel okay about getting as my tight end 2, or if a 3 tight end build, there's still guys I like that late. So I love Parkinson. He's my favorite of these bets. I think he's going to be this year's Ferguson. I love him. I think he's a phenomenal click.
Yep, just betting on him being the starter and a bunch of touchdowns, hopefully. He's already getting that starter's rest, so that's nice to see.
I know we see Tim Patrick go round 17. That's a guy I'm gonna move forward and prioritize. I wouldn't take him over Yoshi, but I think Patrick's somebody that didn't get drafted for 25. There's only 25% of BBMs left, and I don't know anybody that was clicking him. You'd have to be nuts. I'd love to see if somebody out there was actually clicking Tim Patrick before these last couple of weeks. But I think he's a worthwhile click. I think he's going to have a very clear role. I think Bo Nix fits his style very well. So he's somebody that I will definitely be clicking more. Wow. Him, Jalen Hyatt, and Slayton are going to kind of become those new last-round priorities for me. That's the only other guy that I look at. I'm like, I wish I had him on the squad, but I don't know where he would have gone. Like we wouldn't have got him. We would have had to take him over Yoshi, and I'm going to go Yoshi there still every time.
Someone was taking Chase Claypool in 3 out of every 4 drafts that they completed, so it would not have shocked me to see someone clicking Tim Patrick at a rather aggressive rate. Yeah, but that's all I got to say about that. Anything else before we sign off here?
No, thank you guys so much. 260 of you here. Love to see us wrap up with that nice high number, approaching the 300s again. Thumbs up would be so appreciated on your way out. The likes, the shares, the retweets. Wherever you're watching, if you can come over and hit that sub button on YouTube if you're not here with us, it does help our numbers. It helps the algorithm to hit those thumbs up and get out to more people. And of course, rosaryjournal.com is where all our content is housed. The draft guide next update will be sent out tomorrow to anyone who's bought it. And if you haven't yet, just $10. We greatly appreciate your support. It's what kind of keeps us going here, keeps the lights on, keeps us motivated to continue to pump out mostly free content for all you guys. So if you have that one thing that we get paid for, we'd love to have you guys support us in that sense. And I promise it will be worth your money. So please do check that out. Check out the content at rosaryjournal.com. And I'm pumping out little pieces of the guide on the website to give you guys sneak little peeks. So if you're still on the fence, $10 is too much. Check out those articles. And if you read them and you still think it might not be worth your 10, then okay, that's fine. But we're pumping out a few little sneak peeks for you there too. Anything, Mo, that you'd like to pump before we wind down?
Trade value chart. I will be getting cracking on that rather soon. Nice. That is the big thing that I do in season. Took it over last year. Enjoyed it thoroughly. Shout out to Jackson Barrett for helping me out with that. I do have one fun closing stat of the day to sign us off here. It'll be a little guessing game for you. How many yards did Devon Achane have on his first 30 NFL carries?
Oh, you tweeted this out earlier. I saw it. I liked it. It was like, wasn't it like 400 something? Like
414 yards on his first 30 NFL carries.
That's incredible.
Just absurd.
Wild. Over like
just absurd.
So what's that equate to? Like almost 14 yards a carry, like that.
It's something like, I think it's like over 17. Let me quickly do that math right now.
That is
almost 14. My bad. Yeah, 13.8 yards per carry, and then plummeted back down to earth to average the most yards per carry of anyone with at least 100 carries in the season at 7.8.
Do you know how many fantasy points per game he averaged when he saw 10 or more snaps?
Probably something ridiculous like 27.
It's like 31. It's crazy. Yeah, there's so many Devon Achane stats you guys can just anyone could throw out there and be like, oh my god. And that's why you should be taking him in round 2, because this guy can truly break fantasy. It's a great way to wrap us up. Thanks again, guys, for being here. RosaryJournal.com is where we breed and feed you fantasy wolves in that world of fantasy sheep. Be the wolf, guys. Until next time, later.